Haggling with the owner over the price took quite a long time, and in the end, Su Xing ended up trading extra medicines, stones, as well as 50 liang of gold for that thunder fire sand. My friend, won't you take a look at some artifacts? The artifacts from the Blooming Water Pavilion are the most famous within the entire Heavenly River Star Square. The owner warm-heartedly said, showing a knowing smile. Soon, Heavenly Water City's Water and Land Assembly will be convened. There's a satisfactory artifact that would be absolutely beneficial to you if it was in your hands. These are all ordinary artifacts, though. Su Xing glanced at the restricted goods that were placed upon the shelf. They were all inferior nebula stage artifacts, and the only item that could be counted as commendable was a single ground-splitting sword. However, Su Xing planned to enter the nebula stage in order to use the Thunder Cry sword and the Firebolt sword. Thus, he was naturally uninterested in these artifacts. Alright. Owner, do you know where I can find mist cloud seeds? Su Xing remembered he needed these seeds. The owner shook his head. I'll keep an eye out for you, friend. Then thanks. Su Xing smiled. Carrying a bottle of Thunder Fire sand, Su Xing found one of the weapon refinement shops in the Heavenly River Star Square. Earlier when he was browsing the Star Square, he noticed that this shop put out some fine steel to sell. Bullets on Earth generally used brass or iron for crafting. Discussing with the weaponsmith for a bit, Su Xing chose a piece of lustrous gold copper to use with the Thunder Fire sand. Soon after, Su Xing spoke again with the weaponsmith regarding the general demands for refining and crafting bullets. My friend, I'm afraid that using the Thunder Fire sand just to forge a few of these conical projectiles is a bit of a waste. The weaponsmith shook his head. He thought Su Xing was a commoner that really came to mess around with him. Using star energy to induce a discharge of this sort of conical projectile could not be compared with the might of refined weapons, even if it was paired with Thunder Fire sand. Everything will be all right as long as you do what I told you. This is my personal preference. Su Xing replied. Fine then. How many bullets do you think you can make? Su Xing asked him. The weaponsmith thought for a moment. 25. I'll pick these up in 10 days. No problem. Exiting the weapon refinement shop, Su Xing breathed a sigh of relief. He was somewhat anxious about the progress of the bullets, but there was no choice seeing as how he himself was unable to refine weapons. In May, do you guys also go through this much trouble when refining your weapons? Star Generals have true origin starfire, so we can refine the weapons ourselves. Liangshan Continent's weaponsmiths just have no way to refine our destined star weapons. Lin Yingmei seriously replied. Seems like you really can only relax when you refine the thing yourself. Leaving this sort of business to another person would give no one peace of mind. Su Xing bitterly laughed. Wu Xinjie comforted him. When your star energy reaches the galaxy stage, your Dantian will be able to condense your own starfire. When that time comes, young master can also just refine items yourself. Galaxy stage? Now is a bit too early to be thinking about that. If young master really wants to be at ease, you could just learn how to find a few earthly fires from him to do refinement. However, young master is not proficient with weapon refinement, so I fear that this will be extremely challenging. Forget it, we don't have the time for this anyways. Su Xing still had many things to do. Twilight descended. Having circled around the Heavenly River Star Square for half a day, Su Xing was unable to locate any sign of the mist cloud seed. Though, he was actually able to purchase all the magic books he needed. One was the Art of Remote Manipulation. This was the most fundamental magic for star cultivators, and it was commonly seen when discarding low-level artifacts. There was also a copy of the Shrink Object technique, which would temporarily reduce the size and bulk of an object. It was precisely because of this that low-level artifacts were thrown away. In addition to these, there were also several bottles of Qi recovery potions, 20 copies of the Splashing Fire Talisman, and 10 copies of the Daoist Light Talisman. There were still some leftover useless items that Su Xing simply took to a money farm to exchange for several tens of liang of gold. Returning to the health cottage, Insuan had already prepared an entire meal. She was the only person in the house, and Lin Yingmei and Wu Xinjie, who were stuck inside the star nest for an entire day, also finally got to come out. Young master, how do you feel about Heavenly Water City now? As expected, it's very lively. Unfortunately, I didn't find the whereabouts of the mist cloud seed. Su Xing said regretfully. Young master is thinking of refining a pill to break through the Stardust stage, aren't you? And Su Wen rolled her eyes. Su Xing nodded. He already entered the Stardust stage bottleneck. If it was the him from before, perhaps he wouldn't have been in such a rush. However, now that he knew that the Water and Land Assembly was just about to be held, he was in a hurry. If young master is willing to believe in Su Wen perhaps could help young master find some substitute ingredients. Su Wen asked softly. Su Xing stared blankly. That's right, how could he forget about the efficacious star, the divine physician and Su Wen? For better or for worse, and Su Wen was the one who refined the Starbreaker golden pill. Perhaps she could find an alternative solution. Will that trouble you at all? Su Xing hesitated for a moment. After all, they have known each for hardly even a day. The business before with Lin Yingmei was already a big enough hassle for her. And Su Wen lightly smiled. I am the efficacious star. If it is something regarding pills and medicine, then there is no trouble at all. Then, thank you so much. Su Xing gave a great sigh, handing the recipe over to Su Wen. Not at all. 3. The divine physician shook her head, taking the recipe and looking it over. Little sister and Su Wen, are you certain of this? Wu Xinjie asked. And Su Wen asked in turn, will it do as long as the young master can break through to the nebula stage? Then it's certain. And Su Wen smiled, smiling very self-confidently. Su Xing also seized the opportunity to discuss with Su Wen some questions about pills and their materials. Within the realm of pills, the efficacious star could be considered an expert, and she gave Su Xing explanations of many of Liangshan continent's pill arts. Unwittingly, the young night turned into midnight. Oh, right, Sister Xinjie went today to see the ancient tomb. Did you discover its underlying logic? And Su Wen suddenly asked. Wu Xinjie twitched her mouth. This ancient tomb is much too strange. Over there were only 2 iron coffins. Even Sister Knowledge Star also thinks it's odd. And Su Wen smiled. Wu Xinjie stole a glance at Su Xing and giggled. After a moment, and Su Wen was the first to return to her room to rest. Young master, you said that the result would reveal itself tonight. Is it time to go unravel the ancient tomb? Lin Yingmei raised her brow. Wu Yong, could you be a bit more serious about this? But is so boring, isn't that right, young master? Wu Xinjie exhaled alluringly. No more arguing. In a moment, we'll have some business to attend to. Su Xing looked at Wu Xinjie. So how about it? Have you figured out the ancient tomb's mechanism? The coffins aren't used to hold bodies. This hint is also too strange. Since young master cracked it, Xinjie doesn't feel like thinking about it. Wu Xinjie's eyes were as charming as a pool of water during the spring. However, did young master really crack it in such a short amount of time? Let's go there and take a look first. Su Xing didn't have much to say. The 3 again rushed to the outskirts of the ancient tomb, and from far away, they could hear the sounds of a battle. They immediately concealed their figures, hiding to the side. Outside the ancient tomb, artifacts and talismans filled the dark night sky. A group of 5 people were working together to attack a solitary white figure. Young master, your chance to become the hero that rescues the beauty has arrived. Wu Xinjie gave an interested smile. Su Xing furrowed his brow. There was no mistake. That figure being attacked by a coordinated assault was, astonishingly, the girl they met that morning, whose clothes were like snow. However, it seemed that although she was receiving the attacks of 5 or 6 cultivators, the young girl was still rather calm. We tracked you for this long, yet we didn't think you would return. Could it be you solved the puzzle? If that's the case, I could let you go. The noble's son with the paper fan coldly smiled as it shot out a green light. The people surrounding her all had cultivation that was at least the Stardust late stage. The young man with the paper fan who led them himself had a cultivation at the Nebula middle stage. The girl was clearly at a disadvantage. Su Xing urgently wished to act, but it was at that moment, a drastic change to the situation suddenly occurred. He only heard the sound of a clear and ringing voice, full of disdain. If you want to die that badly, let me help you. The young girl waved her hand, and a blue light suddenly appeared. Her hand now held a sword the entirety of which sparkled, a snowy and austere double-edged sword. First snow meets sunshine, the young girl shouted, her stance completely graceful, her movements and pace like those of a swimming dragon. Weaving about within the 5 cultivators' encirclement, her blade's edge sent frost and snow into the sky. The tip of her blade was swift, and several artifacts were taken down under that sword. The girl's white clothes gently floated as her sword assumed a ceremonial stance. A cold light pierced through the snow. One cultivator had just taken out an artifact, but his neck was sliced by that blade. The wound was frozen over so quickly and thoroughly that not a single drop of blood was spilled. It's Snow Soul Sword Arts. Sir Paper Fan became frightened, hastily raising his treasure fan. From the middle of the fan, a green light launched towards the young girl. The girl threw out her palm, suddenly shooting out a cold light. Fog struck the fan, and absolutely shattering it, she followed up by rapidly advancing, clutching her icy sword, the chilling and merciless light of which seemed to bring the sword to life. She forced the group of cultivators to focus solely on defending again and again. Witnessing the brilliance of her swordplay, Lin Yingmei could not help but gain newfound respect for the sword and its user. What kind of person is she? Su Xing was astonished. He could sense from her a hazy astral energy. Wu Xinjie recited a chant, and her pupils glowed, sending her gaze towards the girl. This was the Knowledge Star's Huangjie technique, think then act. It was able to clearly see the power level and condition of the target. No star general could escape her discerning eye. She's a star master, Wu Xinjie said, covering her mouth. And that sword technique's might is not at all low. Unexpectedly, the one that was killing 5-star cultivators in a frenzy with a single artifact double-edged sword was only a single star master. Within the blink of an eye, 3-star cultivators had already perished beneath the girl's sword technique. From start to finish, she didn't even use any other techniques or artifacts. A Nebula early-stage cultivator became incontinent from fear, turning his body and fleeing. The girl's eyes were cold. Putting together 2 fingers, a cold light appeared. The fleeing cultivator screamed as he was run through, falling to the ground. The only one remaining was the Nebula middle stage, fan-waving young man. What are you, really? He was dripping with cold sweat. He could not believe that 5 cultivators working together were not a match for her. Hurry and run. With long sword pointed straight at him, the young girl gave a chilling laugh. Don't look down on this one. Sir Paper Fan shouted, waving his green fan wildly. The green light in the middle of the fan suddenly became wild. Cool breeze play a song, green dragon roar and dance. There was the distinct sound of a dragon roar, and the green light abruptly swirled in midair. It condensed into the shape of a dragon, a green dragon writhing about. Green dragon treasure fan. No wonder you're so arrogant. The young woman raised her brows, revealing a trace of surprise. For better or for worse, the paper fan-wielding noble's son had finally reached Nebula middle stage. He naturally could not tolerate being looked down upon. He made use of all of his power, and the green dragon in the middle of the fan bared its fangs. A magnificent light abruptly appeared, and a graceful figure emerged beside the young girl. It was at this time that the green dragon rushed towards the girl and circled around her, activating an array next to the girl, but the green dragon itself was also arrogant. A star master. Sir Paper Fan noticed the person that emerged beside the girl. He laughed greedily. It seems this young master has hit the jackpot. Mobilizing and urging on all of his power, the green dragon abruptly increased in size dramatically. The young lady raised her sword and combined it with a spell, resisting with all her power. Young master? Wu Xinjie said. Su Xing knew it was time to attack, and his figure flashed. Like a sharp sword, he suddenly shot forward. Sir Paper Fan's divine intent immediately detected Su Xing. This was no surprise considering his Nebula middle stage cultivation. He rapidly made hand seals and a spell shot toward Su Xing. A Stardust cultivator dares to sneak attack this one. Sir Paperfan's Green Dragon fan did not rest as he was about to use his other hand to grab an artifact. But at this time, his hand halted its movements. A spearhead covered in a cold light passed through his stomach without pause. Arctic Star Spear. Sir Paperfan sluggishly lowered his head and saw this spear edge. Lin Chong. Su Xing at this time pierced through his opponent's throat with silver blade. 2. Sir Paperfan's eyes dimmed, suddenly hatefully releasing his last breath. When he died, the green dragon suddenly vanished into thin air, and the treasure fan's light also sputtered out. Su Xing took the opportunity to graciously receive the man's purse. 3. Lin Chong withdrew her Arctic Star Spear, and Wu Xinjie also rushed to Su Xing's side. Su Xing pensively sized up the Star Master, completely curious about the Star General by her side. That Star Maiden's build was very tall, her entire body was clad in a gorgeous temple robe, her eyes seemingly on fire, her legs tall and lean. Especially eye-catching was the small 5-color banner fluttering about her body. 5 elements weather banner, so it's actually the leader star, the resourceful strategist Zhu Wu. Wu Xinjie giggled. Apparently, this was the leader star, the resourceful strategist. It can be said that in Liangshan, together with the resourceful star Wu Yong, they could be considered within the same department. Su Xing thought to himself. So you too are a star general. The white-clothed girl's eyes looked like they were smiling, yet they were not. Her gaze was directed at the 2 beauties beside Su Xing, trying to deduce who were the Star Maidens. She did not think that both would be star generals. Want to fight? She faintly asked, raising her frosty sword. The leader, Star Zhu Wu. Do you want to fight? Su Xing smiled. The young lady withdrew the frost sword. The leader, Star Resourceful Strategist's face remained expressionless, however, at this time, she suddenly pointed her fingers, and the 5 elements weather banner faded away. Lin Yingmei and Wu Xinjie quickly brought up their guard. However, the leader star really was not attacking Su Xing. At a corner, a concealed cultivator saw he was surrounded by 5 small, floating flags. The array lifted him up off his feet. The cultivator's face was filled with fear. The spell released a burst of thundering light, and the cultivator suddenly expired. Su Xing was slightly frightened from the bottom of his heart, and the knowledge star Wu Xinjie was also slightly impressed. Only Lin Yingmei's eyes remained unmoved, like a mountain, staring attentively at the leader star's each and every move. Zhu Sha, the young girl said softly. Actually known as Zhu Sha, the leader star nodded her head and recalled the 5 elements weather banner. Little sister leader star's spell is unexpectedly just as the rumors say. Wu Xinjie said in admiration. Although the leader star resourceful strategist could be considered a support type, in Maiden Mountain, no one could hold a hand to her spells. Even a few military stars probably could not be her opponent, causing the knowledge star to envy her. This sister doesn't know which star you are? Zhu Sha's voice was as unyielding as a boulder, carefully watching Wu Xinjie. Take a guess, little sister. Wu Xinjie refused to oblige. You seem to be a heavenly star. Zhu Sha refused to think any further. Wu Xinjie's invitation was met with disinterest. Then, the white-clothed girl's gaze turned from Wu Xinjie and Lin Yingmei to Su Xing. She lightly smiled, her words not particularly relenting. The young master coming out this late at night isn't a coincidence, is it? Could it be that you intentionally prepared to come play the hero for little girls to see? Su Xing laughed. I'm called Su Xing. It seems the young lady has forgotten, and this time wasn't strangers coming together by chance. Didn't you absolutely refuse to speak your esteemed name? Gong Kaiwei. The young girl smiled. The western mountains have ferns. 6. The beauty remains steadfast. The western mountains lack ferns. The beauty refuses to return. A good name. Su Xing praised. Young master need not speak with such polite words. Kaiwei only wishes to ask the young master a question. Gong Kaiwei said profoundly, the ancient tomb's mechanism, the young master has deciphered it. Kaiwei, your esteemed self has apparently also deciphered it. Su Xing smiled. Su Xing and Gong Kaiwei gazed into each other's eyes. Abruptly, it felt as if all of their daggers were drawn, as the atmosphere became heavy, like a powder keg ready to blow. 1. Xinjie, what does the scouter say about her? Nah, I'll stop there. Right arrow curving left 2. Remember, it is a handgun with a bayonet. Right arrow curving left 3. After all, dead men don't need money. Right arrow curving left 4. Right arrow curving left 5. And finally, a name. Right arrow curving left 6. This is a pun on her name, as both the phrase and her name contain. The atmosphere had become stiff and not a single person spoke a word, but Su Xing didn't mind because this gave him ample opportunity to appreciate the beautiful girl before him. Gong Kaiwei was the first to speak, snorting, "Then is young Master Su Xing willing to explore the ancient tomb together? If you really solve the puzzle, I definitely wouldn't mind. The ancient tomb has 2 iron coffins. Since this is so, we shall each complete 1 mechanism." Roger. Su Xing clapped his hands together in approval. Gong Kaiwei turned and made her way into the ancient tomb without so much as glancing at the belongings of the dead cultivators that littered the ground. Su Xing felt that pillaging these items in front of a lady would appear to be too dishonorable. However, he immediately felt it was shameful enough that he himself was just a newcomer fresh off the boat. As if he could still afford to give a rat's ass about things such as honor. When Gong Kaiwei turned to go, Su Xing took the opportunity to use his divine intent to conduct a survey. Kaiwei, Wu Xinjie lagged behind, holding her chin as she pondered deeply. Lin Yingmei stared at Wu Xinjie, giving her a look that asked, "Are you love-struck?" "That's not it. I seem to have heard the name Kaiwei somewhere before." Wu Xinjie pulled at her hair. Lin Yingmei did not spare Wu Xinjie another thought and followed Su Xing into the ancient tomb. Unexpectedly, the other side was a star master, and she also did not need to stay within a star nest to cultivate. All in all, when star generals emerged from the star nest to protect their masters, a few seconds were needed. Although this time was very short, in terms of fighting strength, these few seconds could be fatal. Entering the ancient tomb, Gong Kaiwei sat on the edge of a coffin, humming a tune, her expression completely relaxed. The leader star stood guard by her side, and her expression was like a boulder. Even the desire to make a pass at her was lost. "Are you ready?" Gong Kaiwei's smile was a spring breeze. Su Xing nodded his head. Lin Yingmei and Wu Xinjie stood to the side and watched, curious. They did not know just how their own master solved the puzzle. "Mei, did you figure out the mechanism?" Wu Xinjie whispered. "This servant isn't interested in these sorts of things. This should be your responsibility," Lin Yingmei said. Nevertheless, her eyes remained fixed on Su Xing's every movement. Wu Xinjie wanted to laugh from the bottom of her heart. Yingmei's words were empty. Su Xing took out a pot of kerosene from within his astral bag and poured it into the middle of the coffin. Gong Kaiwei followed by filling her coffin to the brim with water. The behavior of these two really was a bit odd. The coffins were not used to hold bodies, but instead water and oil. While Wu Xinjie pondered about this oddity, Su Xing suddenly lit a starfire, and the oil proceeded to ignite in a raging inferno, turning the coffin into something resembling a charcoal basin. Gong Kaiwei watched Su Xing, admiration flashing briefly within her eyes. The ground then issued a muffled rumbling sound, and between the 2 coffins, the floor caved in. A flight of stairs leading underneath the ancient tomb abruptly opened. Impressively, this was the ancient tomb's true entrance. "You really did solve the mechanism," Lin Yingmei exclaimed. Even till now, she still had not figured out how her master had figured out the solution in such a short amount of time. Although this already wasn't the first time she experienced Su Xing's ability to crack lost relics, each time caused the majestic star to surge from the bottom of her heart. Her own master was practically born for Liangshan's riddles and puzzles. Wu Xinjie also was stunned. After all, the knowledge star was Maiden Mountain's #1 wise woman. She contemplated the scene before her eyes for but a moment when she understood how Su Xing found the ancient tomb's mechanism. Of course, this ancient tomb's hint is too ingenious. Wu Xinjie gasped in admiration. "Ingenious hint where?" Lin Yingmei asked. "Wu Xinjie looked around the ancient tomb and smiled craftily. The entire ancient tomb is the hint. Lin Yingmei blinked. Wu Xinjie then said that this ancient tomb's biggest hint lay in why the coffins had an iron top. Understanding this point meant that solving the ancient tomb's mechanism was extremely easy after that. Seeing that Lin Yingmei still did not understand, Wu Xinjie indicated to the things Su Xing and Gong Kaiwei used to open the tomb. Water and fire? Lin Yingmei was astounded. Wu Xinjie smiled. That's right, iron coffins and every grave wrapped in gold, wood and earth. According to the 5 elements theory, the hint needed to open the mechanism naturally was the remaining 2 elements, water and fire. Any puzzle always feels exceptionally easy after it has been solved. However, the one stuck in the maze cannot solve the puzzle. Those other star cultivators would never have arrived upon the 5 elements. Su Xing approached. Seeing the 2 whispering, he interrupted them. We're going down into the ancient tomb in a moment. Finish making your preparations? Xinjie likes young master more and more. Wu Xinjie threw herself onto him, not caring about the others. Su Xing smiled. This ancient tomb's mechanism only looked mysterious. If you think carefully, you can solve it. Xinjie concedes defeat. 3. Even if I could solve it, I still could not do it as quickly as young master. You are practically an evil genius. Wu Xinjie proudly once again puffed out her impressive chest. Young master and Xinjie are indeed a couple matched together by heaven and earth. This Gong will be entering first. Gong Kaiwei and the leader star Wu Zhu took the initiative to descend. Su Xing and his companions followed them into the entrance. As soon as they walked down, the mechanism's large door closed up behind them. Inside, there was a matchless darkness such that one could not see their own hands. Su Xing sensed that a chilly divine intent had locked onto him. It seems that Gong Kaiwei's precautions have not disappeared in the slightest, yet Su Xing did not have the least bit of interest in sneak attacking her. Throwing out an already prepared Taoist light talisman, the talisman flashed a beam of pure light, illuminating the ancient tomb's interior. A winding set of stone stairs spiraled downwards, the end of which could not be seen. Take these. Su Xing extended his hand and caught several pills. These are miasma-repellent pills. They can help you resist the ancient tomb's corpse and poison gases. Gong Kaiwei said, Thanks. Su Xing did not recklessly take the pills after he received them. Who knew if Gong Kaiwei had somehow tampered with the pills? After all, it couldn't be said for sure what sort of good things this ancient tomb had. Obviously, Gong Kaiwei was aware of Su Xing's thinking, and she snorted disdainfully at him. This princess never cared for a reason to kill. Su Xing did not feel like retorting, so he directly fished out some pills from his person and threw them to Gong Kaiwei. With a smirk on his face, these are called exorcism pills. They can repel the evil spirits and curses within this ancient tomb. Dare to take them? Looking at these dark and swarthy pills, how would she ever ingest them? Gong Kaiwei raised her eyebrows and proceeded to crush the pills into dust. Did you know you couldn't take them? Gong Kaiwei understood Su Xing changed his style to illustrate the present situation. She smiled. Young Master Su Xing, you really are careful. Caution keeps you alive. You're very careful, yet you dare to descend into this tomb together with this Gong. Could it be you aren't afraid that this ancient tomb may have some rare treasures to fight over? When that time comes, this Gong won't be so kind as to say anything. Gong Kaiwei glanced at Wu Xinjie. Or perhaps you think your star generals are a match for Zhu Sha. Su naturally does not believe that a fairy as incorruptible as Lady Kaiwei would think of doing something like killing a man to rob him. Su Xing's tone was ambiguous. Gong Kaiwei stifled a smile. Ah, I know, Wu Xinjie suddenly piped up at this time. The group stopped, all directing their gazes upon her. Su Xing asked her, What did you discover? Wu Xinjie shook her head while sticking out her tongue, an incredibly cute gesture. The group continued to follow the steps in front of them as Wu Xinjie watched Gong Kaiwei, a crafty and frightening light flashing through her eyes. Authored note, requesting earnestly for your ballots, 1. Let's just forget about the fact that the coffin is made from iron. Right arrow curving left 2. Ah, she's so adorable. Right arrow curving left 3. Right arrow curving left 4. Bitch, please. the spiral staircase continued to extend downwards. With a long and narrow slope, throwing down a Taoist light talisman did not reveal the end as its brilliance finally vanished from sight. Su Xing let out a breath of cold air. If this really was the path leading to the grave, then it was insufferably long. This path looked remarkably clean, and it did not seem like there was a trap, either. In the surroundings, Su Xing noticed that there were no signs of any previous intruders. Even so, Su Xing did not dare to be even slightly careless. Liangshan continent was full of secrets, and only the heavens knew what other great dangers were hiding around the corner. As Su Xing walked, he kept a vigilant watch of the surroundings. Gong Kaiwei unexpectedly glanced at Su Xing and smiled. "You really are a careful man. Could it be you are unable to use divine intent?" Su Xing's mouth twitched. He had only recently comprehended divine intent during the rush to Rippling Wave Kingdom, but his divine intent could only be described as utterly unreliable. Apparently, it was dispersed by using one's own will. The star generals are all born with it, but star cultivators must first refine their own divine sight. However, practicing this divine sight was far more exhausting than the chaotic tail escape technique. After spending half a day, Su Xing had ended up with a sort of overdraft. Listening to Wu Xinjia's explanation, it seemed that the best method to cultivating divine intent was still to have a superior art. Gong Kaiwei looked at Su Xing without replying and continued to advance downwards. Suddenly, she turned, and with a smile that was at the same time not a smile, said, "Is your star general the knowledge star, resourceful star Wu Yong?" Su Xing completely did not expect that she would ask this. For a moment, he was speechless and did not know how he should reply. In a duel between star masters, even the identity of their star generals was a trump card. There were various countermeasures for addressing the difference in the rankings between star generals. For example, the array used last time at Grand Border City to trap the majestic star was specifically targeted at Lin Chong. Thus, this is why the knowledge star Wu Yong's first Huangjie technique is think then act. Although Gong Kaiwei did not mind compromising her own star general, in the end, there was an inherent difference in this girl. With a single look, it was obvious that this girl was the type that was tricky to deal with. Besides her build, brow and bust, the other assets she took pride in included those snow soul sword arts and that unfathomable star energy. From start to finish, Wu Xinjia and Lin Yingmei had never revealed their destined star weapons, so how did she find out? Gong Kaiwei noticed Su Xing's silence, and giving a faint smile, "This Gong was only guessing. This should be the first time I've seen you, but you spent only a short amount of time to figure out the mechanism. Only the knowledge star could have such talent. 2. Didn't you also figure it out?" Su Xing tried to downplay the fact. This Gong's star general, the resourceful strategist, doesn't lose out to the knowledge star. Gong Kaiwei said emphatically, "Once I had Zhu Sha's hint, only then did this Gong figure it out without issue." Su Xing inadvertently glanced at the stone-like leader star, but he said nothing. The group walked for a very long time before they finally arrived at the end of the slope. The end opened into a wide, open clearing. Su Xing proceeded to activate another Taoist light talisman. Sweeping it all around, they were able to clearly see their surroundings. Underneath this ancient tomb was some other beautiful wonderland, with murals, glass lamps and an army of figurines. There were many copper lampstands scattered everywhere, all of them manufactured in the shape of lamp-holding slaves, and each slave was kneeling with both legs, their hands holding up the precious objects. This type of lamp, if brought to an antiques market on Earth, would be absolutely priceless. A sarcophagus was placed upon a platform that jutted out at the very top of the main hall. It seems that was final resting place for the ancient tomb master skeleton. This ancient tomb truly was unexceptional. Wu Xinjia was greatly disappointed. For an officer as insignificant as this to have such a clever mechanism could be considered unexpected. What else could there be? Gong Kaiwei had on a face that asked if there was something else. It isn't often that you hear an ancient tomb contains a changed corpse, but where's the tomb's guardian entity? There should be a ghost at the very least? Wu Xinjia's head shook left and right. Su Xing had absolutely nothing to say regarding her tendency to seek thrills. Then you should have went to the Thousand Buddha tomb. You'll definitely remember it for the rest of your life. Gong Kai-wei snorted. Who's there? Su Xing suddenly raised his head and shouted. Within the darkness above the ancient tomb, a light discreetly lit up a bit, a sort of faint light, carrying with it a soft, white glow. She hovered within the darkness uncertainly, as if she was in the middle of a struggle against drowsiness, opening her eyes slowly one after the other. She was also like a wisp of smoke, bringing with her a slight mist. The white shadow transformed itself into a warm and gentle young lady, though that pair of expressions was filled with a cold that could invade the heart. Gong Kai-wei was blank for a moment, but then she whispered, "It's the ghost. That's the ghost." Su Xing was stunned. According to ancient legend, from birth to death, only the soul would not be extinguished. When a life ended, soon afterwards, the soul would leave the body and head towards the next life, every generation living and dying, reincarnating endlessly. However, somewhere in the world, there were bitter ghosts suffering from the three poisons of greed, anger, and sentiment. Fearing death, they yearned for the material world. Dwelling on the past, refusing to pass on, these were the so-called ghosts. Especially within old burial mounds, there were some of the deceased that would take people with them into the grave. 3. The deceased would take advantage of their victim's resentment to refine a spirit to act as their own tomb's guardian. These sorts of ghosts were often far more fearsome than some trap. The Su Xing that disbelieved in the supernatural had never seen such a thing. Even though he knew Liangshan continent was filled with the mysterious, upon suddenly seeing this, he was truly given a fright. When the two people cried out, the sound drifted and faded from far away within the ancient tomb, as if a lion had fallen into a tranquil lake and stirred up ripples. The light immediately shifted over to the distant darkness like it was alarmed by something, and within the dark surroundings, it lit up once more. Su Xing's mind was jumping, and right after, almost as if the heart within his chest had stopped beating, he ceased breathing. He saw the beams of light as well as that spirit just now had almost the exact same pale glow. The darkness in front of them lit up. Afterwards, as if countless lamps had been lit, deathly pale lights began to rapidly sparkle, so much so that when he lifted his head to look, the area above him was also illuminating, flashing a serene yet lifeless light. Countless ghosts, as if awakening from a deep slumber, sensed the warmth of the very first human bodies in several hundred years and assembled where they were. Then, with the white light of wispy smoke, drifting indefinitely, they transformed into all sorts of faces, male and female, old and young, beautiful and unsightly. Each deathly pale face was brimming with the desire, the addiction, for flesh. Within Su Xing's eyes, there was but a single feeling, icy cold. You really jinxed us? Gong Kai-wei spat darkly. Wu Xinjie innocently stuck out her tongue. The leader star Zhusha's 5 elements weather banner unfolded in full, and though she seemed cold and determined, she was not that ruthless, for 5 small flags encircled the group and became a barrier. It was as if a shining flame had forced the ghosts to retreat a meter. Unexpectedly, this is a warding 5 array. Wu Xinjie sighed darkly. Sphinx, clang. From the middle of the darkness came this clear sound. Gong Caiwei's face was cold as frost. Seizing her sword, unsheathing its icy cold edge, it spewed forth boiling ice and fire. Young Master Su Xing, do you have a means of fighting ghosts? Su Xing brought out the binding dragon whisk, for it could be considered the sole artifact before his eyes that he could use. A whisk? Gong Kaiwen felt like laughing. 6. Gripping her sword tightly, she raised her cold sword. With so many ghosts, if you raise them as a magical army, then that's not bad. But what a shame that they ran into this gong. Gong Kaiwei lightly shouted. The lethal icy sword, under the grip of its master, blue light flaring vigorously, shot out countless rays that met the rushing ghosts and swept them aside. In an instant, the pale light of the ghosts lost out in brilliance to the blue light before them. Despite this, these ghosts apparently had no concept of fear at all, and like before, rushed again from all 4 directions. The moment the blue light touched the ghosts, a sword chi burst forth that chilled to the very bone. With a buzz, the first dozens of ghosts immediately vanished under the sword, their souls flying and scattering away. Su Xing wasn't idle either. With a shake of the binding dragon whisk, its magic power turned into a thread, shooting out from the whisk. Although its power wasn't as stunning as that of Gong Caiwei's godly weapon, victory lay in repeated attacks. Within a period of time, the two worked together to suppress the ghost's attack. The ghostly howls of the ghosts resounded within the void and darkness of the main hall, a sound that would make anyone's blood run cold. 1. So apparently the spear she ran Sir Paper Fan through with wasn't her signature spear? If that was the case, then how did Sir Paper Fan recognize her as Lin Chong? Me confused. Right arrow curving left 2. Sorry to burst your bubble, lady, but right arrow curving left 3. Note, this is an ancient practice where a deceased person is buried alongside sacrifices. This isn't a ghost dragging away a living person. Right arrow curving left 4. Right arrow curving left 5. Especially against evil spirits, right arrow curving left 6. Honestly, I would too, if I didn't know that it was a rather powerful artifact. Gong Caiwei's frosty sword effortlessly cut through the ghosts, clearing an entire circle around herself in the blink of an eye. The two's attack power was admittedly great, however, it was still incapable of deterring the rest of the departed souls. More and more ghosts hurled themselves towards the group. These ghosts have been imprisoned within the tomb for an untold number of years, and their thirst to once again taste flesh drove these spirits to lose their sense of reason. A few of those lost souls even broke through Zhu Sha's warding array, throwing themselves at Wu Xingjie. Su Xing saw this out of the corner of his eye and turned his body. He swept the whisk and dispersed that bunch of spirits while sweeping peacefully past Wu Xingjie's whole body. But the number of ghosts in the surroundings was too high. Killing yet unable to efficiently kill, it had only been a few bouts, but Gong Caiwei felt a bit sweaty, her breathing becoming heavy. Even so, she directed a fierce look at the surrounding flying weeping ghosts, baring her fangs, but her sword's blue light was not as sharp as before. Gong Caiwei grit her teeth, smiling grimly. From within the screams of the ghosts that filled the entire area, the sound of a lone ghostly wailing began to come through. The faint white light began to release more light, as if weaving its ghostly qi. Gong Caiwei turned her head and looked at Su Xing. Well, it looks like the ghosts haven't got much left. Gong Caiwei glanced and noticed Su Xing looked pristine, as if nothing had happened. Waving that whisk around as he pleased, the whisk's magic power scattered over a wide area, handling the ghosts rather effectively, but it was obvious that this sort of artifact required significant power to support it. He was only Stardust late stage, so how could he maintain it for so long? How could she have known that the man who contracted 2 star generals under him had also obtained the Deviant Star's star energy? Though his cultivation looked ordinary, this was nevertheless absolutely the proud star energy of one body. Their numbers are truly too many. Should we fall back first, then make a plan? Wu Xingjie suggested. Although the ghosts were easy to take care of, victory lay in greater numbers. If they had forced their way through, they would have wasted much energy. Gong Caiwei would not admit defeat, extending her right hand, forming an orchid hand seal. Along with her hand gesture, the icy, frosty blade halted in midair. Suddenly, it plunged towards the ground, piercing into the ground in front of Gong Caiwei with a clang, and thereupon, the blue light rose once again. The tip of a cold blade emerged from the ground, and with the sword as the epicenter, the group became wrapped within a protective barrier. The surrounding ghosts eyed the tasty bodies of flesh before them. They threw caution to the wind as they all together rushed swiftly forwards, but only a short moment later, the barrier that sat on the ground abruptly rose upward. At once, the blue light hovered, a mist hanging in the air. It seemed this blue light had a spiritual nature, and a rainbow light arced over the two's heads, immediately obstructing the ghosts outside of it. The ghostly weeping grew louder and louder while countless ghosts struck the barrier with everything they had. Gong Caiwei's expression became so cold that even Su Xing, who was to the side, could not help but take note of it. Star ladle great essence, sword swiftly rides the wind. Go! Gong Caiwei put 2 fingers together, and the sword planted in the ground gathered a shining light along the blade. The blue spell along the blade flashed, followed by a rotation of the sword, and a great quantity of sword chi shot out from the sword. Like an unstoppable tidal wave, it flooded the main hall, leaving no corner untouched. The ghosts within the main hall let out mournful screams, being completely cleansed. The sword radiated a pure blue light, slowly dimming. Retrieving her blade, Gong Kaiwei returned it to her astral bag. Lady Kaiwei is amazing. Is this sword perhaps not an ordinary artifact? Wu Xinjie clapped her hands in praise, her eyes shining. I do not know the name of this sword. Tracing Snow. Gong Kaiwei faintly replied, appearing proud. Tracing Snow. Indeed it suits Lady Gong Kaiwei very well. Su Xing said. Gong Kaiwei said coolly, and that whisk suits the young master. Su Xing chuckled. It seems we've wasted a lot of effort, but let's see what's inside this ancient tomb. Gong Kaiwei nodded and said, this Gong wants to see what valuable requires so many ghosts. Once the ancient grave spirits were cleansed, everyone could relax as they searched the ancient tomb. This ancient tomb appeared to not have anything of worth that a star cultivator needed, but after searching almost the entire area, their gazes finally fell upon the sarcophagus atop the platform. Legend has it that if a sarcophagus was buried underground for too long, or because of exposure to ghost chi, or even because of other reasons that gave rise to a changed corpse, but unavoidably, Wu Xinjie could jinx them again. Only after checking that there was nothing peculiar about the sarcophagus did they open it. Pushing open the sarcophagus lid, inside was a skeleton dressed in magnificent attire. Judging from the clothes, this person seemed to have held a very distinguished position. Also piled up in the sarcophagus were large quantities of precious metals and jewels, but apart from these, there was nothing else. And what's with this? All of it is just a bunch of garbage. This is exactly why Xinjie dislikes ancient graves. The ghost chi is too heavy, and there aren't any good funerary items. Those artifacts and astral treasures wouldn't be buried anyways. Wu Xinjie said dejectedly. Glancing at the inscription upon the coffin lid, she twitched her mouth. And this says something about a General 3. How ridiculous. What? Did you say General Tianwei? Gong Kaiwei suddenly asked. Her expression was slightly startled. Aye, it is written thus right on top. Wu Xinjie indicated. Gong Kaiwei took a glance and slowly restored her composure. I did not expect this to be General Tianwei's ancient grave. Was his influence great? Su Xing stared at the bones within the coffin, wrinkling his brow quizzically. General Tianwei was once one of Liangshan continent's more famous fierce generals. Although he wasn't a star cultivator, his military career was outstanding. When the Great Liang dynasty sent an expeditionary force to the rippling Wave Kingdom, General Tianwei took 20,000 troops and horses to defeat the Great Liang dynasty's army of 100,000 in a battle that rocked Liangshan. Having been in Liangshan continent for only so long, Su Xing was still a bit ignorant of this world's affairs. Although Ling Yingmei and Wu Xinjie were star generals, they were barely acquainted with the history of star duels, and regarding specific details on Liangshan continent, they were just as lost as Su Xing. And then, Su Xing asked curiously. Then every major school of star cultivators appeared. Only then did the Great Liang dynasty stop their expedition. Gong Kaiwei said, this isn't the point, though. The problem is that legend says this General Tianwei and the Blooming Water Sword sect had a considerable relationship. There's a wearable artifact called the Golden Thread Fish Scale Armor. It is invincible, and the wearer need not fear water nor fire. Even those in proximity to this artifact would find star cultivators to be no challenge. Since this is General Tianwei's tomb, the golden thread armor should also have been buried alongside him, since legend says that it was made into a funerary object after his death. Countless star cultivators have sought the general's grave to obtain this artifact, the golden thread armor, but nobody could ever find it. Gong Kaiwei snorted, her tone carried a bit of ridicule. I never thought it would be this tomb, but now I understand why they had such an exhausting mechanism. As Gong Kaiwei said this, the formerly depressed Wu Xinjie's eyes sparkled, but although the main hall was very large, the items it could conceal were not very many, and even Lin Yingmei joined the search effort. But after searching for a long time, never mind the golden thread armor, not even a single golden thread could be seen. Could it be it wasn't buried with him? Gong Kaiwei could not understand. The way I see it, this just isn't the actual general at all. Su Xing suddenly spoke as leaned against the side of the sarcophagus. Impossible, this place here should be General Tianwei's grave. And it could be, but this body is definitely not the actual general himself. Su Xing was sure of it. Gong Kaiwei walked over. Why is that? Going by what you said, General Tianwei should be an extremely powerful man, at least enough to be given the moniker of Tianwei. Gong Kaiwei nodded. The legends say he was indeed brave and fierce with extraordinary strength. Then I'm right. Looking at the skeleton's joints, they've become weak with age. The finger joints have snapped in several places. This is definitely in contrast to the extraordinary strength this Tianwei person supposedly has. Su Xing indicated to her. The girls naturally did not comprehend modern forensics bone analysis. 5. However, hearing Su Xing's explanation, even they felt there was some logic behind it. Young master's observations are truly keen, even being able to analyze just a skeleton alone. Wu Xinjie admired. Forget it, seems like this was a decoy grave. Su Xing looked around the main hall, dejectedly stepping off the platform. Gong Kaiwei abruptly smiled. Is this what young master Su Xing truly believes? What does Lady Kaiwei want to say? Su Xing turned his head. This Gong believes the ancient grave mechanism was designed to be this complex and layered. This is definitely the general's true burial site. Gong Kaiwei was certain. You say that's the actual general? But we haven't found that golden thread armor you spoke of. Su Xing showed just a bit of playfulness. That really isn't the general's true skeleton. Lady Tsaiwei's meaning is? This ancient grave is concealing another mechanism. Gong Kaiwei said something astonishing. Su Xing's eyes flashed a peculiar light. 1. Right arrow curving left 2. I think he just signed his own death warrant. Right arrow curving left 3. Right arrow curving left 4. Right arrow curving left 5. A fighter pilot and a forensics expert? Where the hell did the Chinese find this guy? This general's tomb conceals yet another mechanism? The knowledge star Wu Xinjie's jaw went slack, a bit confused. Did a grave need to be designed into a calculated trap? Wu Xinjie saw her own master was completely still. She believed from the bottom of her heart that Su Xing should have considered this, but right now, any way they looked at it, this ancient tomb did not overlook a single part of its design. The general's sarcophagus, with its precious metals and stones, the lamp holding slaves, within this general's tomb, all necessities were present. It even held the extremely rare ghosts inside as well. But wait, besides the ghosts, there were still the suspicions about the skeleton that Su Xing pointed out. Wu Xinjie's mind turned rapidly, and she quickly realized why Gong Kaiwei would say such a thing. Lady Kaiwei feels that for an ancient tomb to have so many ghosts is unusual, and generally speaking, only when an ancient tomb contains a valuable item could it be designed with such a ruthless mechanism, correct? Gong Kaiwei nodded. This chamber of the tomb is a diversion meant to draw people in. This Gong surmises that the true tomb has definitely been hidden, much like the mechanism from before. Young Master Su Xing, you must have also thought of this too, right? Su Xing refused to say a word. Gong Tsaiwei's careful deductions caused him to be shocked, for it was indeed as she said. Su Xing had also felt that this grave was like a deceptive shop sign, designed to fool would-be grave robbers, using a decoy to cover up the general's true tomb. This sort of suspect grave within a tomb was not at all rare. If one was not attentive enough, then grave robbers would usually be tricked. After all, when a single person achieves an objective, because of a certain sense of satisfaction, they would not search any further to see whether there may be a hidden mechanism or not. Originally, Su Xing had intended to return temporarily, waiting until they split off from Gong Kaiwei to take another look around. It seemed the degree of acuity the young girl had deserved to be feared. If this Gong's expectations are correct, there isn't much time before the rest of the cultivators discover the mechanism to open the grave and reach this place. We still have some time left to open the mechanism, to find the golden thread fish scale armor. The atmosphere entered into an awkward silence. Very well then. Since the true tomb has a mechanism, let's first find some clues. Wu Xinjie groveled, directing her gaze towards the leader star Zhu Sha. Little sister Zhu Jun, since you are the resourceful strategist, you must find the mechanism quickly. If you get upstaged by this young girl, you're going to embarrass yourself. The resourceful strategist Zhu Sha's face showed no expression, said no words. That pair of slender eyes had already begun surveying the tomb. The group began to once again search for the door hidden within the grave. Xinjie, ignite the lanterns, Su Xing said. Wu Xinjie and Lin Yingmei ignited the dozen or so lamps that still had oil, illuminating the tomb all around with a yellow light. Su Xing sat on the steps, indifferently folded his arms across his chest, then looked left and right. Gong Kaiwei walked over and sat down next to him, the fragrance of heavenly mountain snow lotus herbs lingering about her. The clothes that surpassed snow covering her entire body were untouched by the slightest speck of dust. It seemed that this, too, was a rather exceptional item. She flashed a smile. Young Master Su Xing, are you not going to go look for clues to the mechanism? If this place has a mechanism, it definitely will not be so simply concealed. Su Xing shook his head. Oh. Gong Kaiwei was in approval. Su Xing turned his head, tilting his head as he looked at the girl. The first time he saw her, he felt Gong Kaiwei was as cold as ice, without an artificial countenance. However, passing through this incident in the general's tomb, he discovered that she was a bit warmer and softer than he thought her to be. Of course, whatever the face hidden behind the veil was thinking about, no one knew. Lady Kaiwei, just what are you planning? Su Xing blurted out. And what is young Master Su Xing anxious about now? Gong Kaiwei lightly smiled. Su Xing said, since you know I am a star master, going by the rules of star duels, we should be considered enemies. And we are enemies, certainly? Gong Kaiwei interrupted him. Su Xing was even more confused. Your cultivation is higher than mine, that tracing snow sword is also not a simple artifact, and your leader star, the resourceful strategist Zhu Wu, is even an expert at using arrays. She is even more incredible than the knowledge star. Don't you feel the current circumstances are very odd? What should obviously have happened is you live and I die, yet now we are having such a light-hearted chat. Gong Kaiwei covered her mouth in surprise, and smiling, Sir, you are truly an understanding person. Then call me Su Xing. Su Xing said. Star duels are definitely as the young master has said, but young Master Su Xing is looking down on this Gong too much. If young Master Su Xing wants to die and this Gong live, this Gong would definitely keep you company and show absolutely no mercy. Gong Zaiwei's tone penetrated through with a cold resolve. However, young Master Su Xing apparently does not have a sense for fighting, so this Gong lost all interest. From the perspective of this Gong, only by having a showdown at Maiden Mountain is one qualified to assume the title of Liangshan Continent's #1. Only by this is there any meaning. Your way of thinking really is simple. Su Xing wanted to say that she was terribly foolish and awfully naive. Assassination was an underhanded method, but it truly was effective. However, taking a different point of view, Su Xing found that he himself seemed to have no means of killing without just cause a person that hadn't threatened him. Perhaps he still had inside a bit of the sense of dignity and duty he had as a soldier, but it could definitely be said he still hadn't completely accepted the rules of star duels. There's still another reason within. Gong Kaiwei muttered to herself, almost faltering. What reason? Killing star masters will admittedly give you the opposing star general's star energy and star weapon, but that star energy contains the star general's and her master's resentment. This sort of loathing star energy will torment a star master to the point of insanity, so it isn't just this Gong who thinks this way, all the other star masters think so as well. Carrying this cursed grudge will not give even the slightest advantage in the fight over Maiden Mountain. Su Xing half doubted what Gong Kaiwei said. The young master doesn't believe me? Su Xing definitely could not believe this. The battle he had with the deviant star at Grand Border City 3 months ago was still fresh on his mind. As these 3 months passed, he harmonized with the deviant star's star energy and did not sense or receive even the slightest sign of a hateful intent within it. The Maiden Mountain records also record it as such. In short, this gong hasn't any sort of interest because this gong has no need for that sort of star energy. Gong Kaiwei laughed. While the two people there were cheerfully chatting away, on the other side were 3 star maidens, each showing their own quirks. After some time, the 3 girls had searched everywhere in the chamber, not even overlooking the smallest corner, but in the end, they still turned up empty-handed. Both the knowledge star Wu Xinjie and the resourceful strategist Zhu Sha, the 2 greatest and wisest experts, even tried to find if there were clues to a different mechanism. Though, even the short time they took to consider this was not an easy task. We are completely unable to find any sort of hidden mechanism. Gong Kaiwei raised her head. Zhu Sha nodded her head towards her without the slightest expression, for she concurred with Wu Xinjie's analysis. Maybe there was never a secret room at all? Lin Yingmei's thinking was the most direct. She believed that perhaps the people here were too smart, that they fooled themselves into believing there was a secret grave within the tomb. Gong Kaiwei narrowed her eyes, inspecting everything placed within the tomb. Have you examined all of these funerary sculptures? Zhu Sha shook her head, her voice was gloomy. We tried everything already. Could it be this gong was mistaken? Gong Kaiwei murmured. Would it have anything to do with the 5 elements mechanism at the very beginning? Lin Yingmei asked. The answer was negative. I didn't spot any items related to the 5 elements mechanism within the tomb. Wu Xinjie said helplessly. Seeing this incident had arrived at a dead end, Su Xing got up. He cast a casual glance at the coffin when suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and smiled. Perhaps this is a mechanism that we could not see from the very start. A mechanism that cannot be seen? Everyone present followed Su Xing's line of sight and saw several unlit lamps, and Wu Xinjie immediately realized what he meant. These lamps were to be used as an intermediary, similar to how the 5 elements were involved in opening the first tomb, to activate the second mechanism. How could these knowledge stars not even come up with this? The problem was that they lacked a 5 elements lamp. That lamp is just within the coffin. Su Xing hinted. Within the sarcophagus interior was a single disc-shaped motif, engraved with the depiction a lamp-holding slave statue. A careful look was needed to see it, for dust and the like so easily concealed it as to almost completely shroud it from view. Young master truly is careful. Wu Xinjie giggled. Although she could understand the situation, sometimes, when compared to Su Xing, who could survey things and instantly respond in myriad ways, she still felt embarrassingly lacking. Thus, she sought to bind together a contract with him. Su Xing got a piece of gold, a platter of water, a piece of stone, a flicker of flame, and a length of wood and placed them each within the lamps, forming the cycle of the 5 elements. Originally, they thought this should have opened it, but unexpectedly the tomb remained quiet without a single reaction. That's odd. Does the 5 elements mechanism not work? For the first time, Su Xing was slightly confused. The knowledge star, resourceful star Wu Yong, smiled and moved with a unique charm. Young master, leave this sort of thing to this little girl. Wu Xinjie was seen standing at the center of the chamber, her eyes closed in deep thought. As she opened them, a seemingly pure light emitted from within her eyes. Wu Xinjie walked around in front of those lamps, sized them up, and switched what was within each of them. Besides the resourceful strategist Zhu Sha, who was lightly nodding her head, Su Xing and the rest completely did not understand what she was doing. If Xinjie has guessed correctly, that thing should be here. Wu Xinjie spoke to herself. Her gaze swept all over the floor, and after a moment, the knowledge star showed a trace of pleasant surprise. Found it? Wu Xinjie pressed that spot on the floor, and that piece of tile sank with a rumble, and an amazing spectacle occurred. The wall behind the sarcophagus issued a dull noise and opened loudly. The mechanism hidden within the tomb had actually been opened by Wu Xinjie. Xinjie, how did you do that? Su Xing praised her in awe. Xinjie was only substituting for young master to put the 5 elements within their proper positions. Wu Xinjie explained. Su Xing's thinking was absolutely correct. but he slightly neglected the positions of the 5 elements. The accepted theory of the 5 elements within Liangshan continent was that the east was for wood, the west for gold, the south for fire, and the north for water. Therefore, Wu Xinjie first confirmed the orientation of the ancient tomb. Then she once again placed the items in accordance with the 5 elements theory. Upon the east lamp was placed wood, upon the west lamp was placed gold, and so forth. As for earth of the 5 elements, that was represented by all the earth within this underground hidden tomb. Then, the only thing left for Wu Xinjie was to find the lamp sculpture bearing the matching design, press it down, and the second 5 elements would open by itself. When Su Xing finished listening to her explanation, he was filled with endless admiration. If they were discussing about the pitfalls of psychology and such, then naturally he believed the knowledge star was not necessarily his opponent, but in case a mechanism involved classical theory, he could only blush in shame. In this field, the knowledge star without a doubt took the lead. As expected of the resourceful star, this gong is interested to see between the resourceful strategist and you just who is the most resourceful. Should there be a chance, we will challenge you. Gong Kaiwei said profoundly, if you could be more earnest, that would be even better. Much obliged. Wu Xinjie believed that refusing had no meaning. Lin Yingmei stared at Wu Xinjie and entered the 3rd level of the tomb without uttering a single word. Su Xing walked to her side, and concerned he asked, Yingmei, what's wrong? Lin Yingmei shook her head, tightly pursing her lips. Compared to the knowledge star Wu Yong, she could still show quite a bit of force. But the currently recuperating girl's eyes clearly showed a trace of unwillingness. Yingmei shall pledge to protect young master. Lin Yingmei clenched her fist, her eyes resolute. Su Xing placed his hand on her shoulder, reminding her to not assume responsibility for everything herself. I know, he said. Gong Kaiwei, who was currently engaged in conversation with Wu Xinjie, watched the couple in front of her. Who is that young girl to the young master Su Xing? Gong Kaiwei carried with her a slight curiosity. From the first time they met, Gong Kaiwei paid attention to Lin Yingmei. The girl's pupils sprung a strong, handsome spirit that touched people's hearts. She was familiar with this sensation. If she was a star general, then why did she currently appear to be extremely weak? It was as if her contractor had died, as if her life energy was critically injured. And what do you think? Wu Xinjie looked at Su Xing holding Lin Yingmei's back, showing an ambiguous smile. Is she young master Su Xing's little sister? Servant? Bodyguard? Gong Kaiwei felt this was not quite the case. A lover was even less likely. She is a person that young master would sacrifice his life to protect. Wu Xinjie endlessly admired him. Gong Kaiwei looked pensive. The 3rd grave's pathway was not at all long. Dim fires were lit within the tomb, and a grand silhouette could vaguely be made out. Su Xing again placed a Taoist-like talisman. Statues of soldiers and horses in formation were separated into 2 groups, and between them was a road. At the end of the road was an elevated platform, where its surroundings had dragon pillars, and in the middle was erected an iron coffin. The bizarre iron coffin was bound by several lengths of iron chain. Among them was one that was bound to the entrance of the pathway. Just as the great door over there opened, the shackles were disturbed, rattling violently. A ghostly wind blew, as if weaving ghost chi. Su Xing had an ominous premonition from the bottom of his heart. This is bad. The taciturn Zhu Sha suddenly shouted. Everybody genuinely felt tense, and even Gong Kaiwei had turned grave. Zhu Sha, is there something else that is far worse than this? That is a 5 ghosts corpse soul lock array. When we opened the door just now, we damaged the array's mechanism. Zhu Sha formed a hand seal, and the 5 elements weather banner turned into a clump. Wind rose, clouds formed, lightning flashed, thunder rolled. The chains shook. In the middle of a loud rumble, the stone door behind them closed heavily. Only the sound of a raucous, coarse, chilling to the very depths of the heart cackling could be heard. Foolish ones, you dare to rush into my General Tianwei's tomb. Today, you shall have no way to return. Rumble. The iron coffin opened, and with golden thread fish scale armor draped over its shoulders, an ugly man grasping a broadsword walked out. His entire body emitted ghost chi, and his eyes were an aquamarine. Countless departed souls swirled about his entire body, issuing ghostly sobs. The scene before them gave off a piercing chill. It's a demon corpse. Zhu Sha concentrated on it. Heh, I did not think that the Grand General Tianwei after death would unexpectedly turn into such an unsightly monster. No wonder so many mechanisms were set up to hide yourself. Gong Kaiwei coldly laughed, tracing snow sword unsheathed. A blue light floated about the entire place, and it immediately mitigated the ghostly chills being generated. Cowardly thief, see that this general still will not kneel. General Tianwei opened his mouth and a puff of ghost chi spewed forth. The 5 elements weather banners spun to block the incoming ghost chi. Princess, be careful! Zhu Sha yelled. Gong Kaiwei snorted, and urging it on with one hand, the tracing snow shot high into the air like a loosed arrow and shone a cold light. General Tianwei lifted his broadsword enshrouded in ghost chi, and with a bang cut away at the tracing snow. Gong Kaiwei's figure moved, arriving in the blink of an eye in front of General Tianwei, apparently having already anticipated that tracing snow would be deflected. Taking advantage of the already airborne sword, she grabbed it as she rapidly flew in for the kill. Tracing snow's cold light and General Tianwei's ghost chi mixed together in a mess. You guys wait here for the opportunity to act, then take it. I can't let her fight by herself. Su Xing told Wu Xinjie and Lin Yingmei. Seeing Lin Yingmei ball up her fist, he knew that forcing the panther head to do nothing was far more unbearable than killing her. We cannot be careless about Gong Kaiwei. Right now, we still cannot let her know your body's condition. Su Xing projected his voice directly to their ears. 2. Yingmei, you are definitely the last card I can play. Lin Yingmei knew that Su Xing's words were meant to console her. During her recuperation period, her strength was not even at half its normal level. Rashly acting was definitely the worst plan. Lin Yingmei nodded her head, silent. General Tianwei's bold and decisive offensive was overpowering even Gong Kaiwei's flexible and delicate swordplay. The countless ghosts to the side recklessly hissed and bit at Gong Kaiwei, scattering her attentiveness. Die! The broadsword hacked downwards toward Gong Kaiwei's head. The young girl coldly snorted. Softly positioning her body, she then flew backwards several meters in retreat. This General Tianwei fought plenty of battles when he was alive, and after turning into a demon corpse, he still ascended another level in strength. The countless ghosts greedily rushed towards and threw themselves at Gong Kaiwei. However, just as they were about to bite into the young girl, a gushing magical power, like a tidal wave, struck and scattered and even outright killed some of the ghosts. You're boasting too much about yourself? Su Xing rushed over. Oh, you didn't escape? Gong Kaiwei showing a smiling face, her veil having long since been torn away by the ghosts. He already knew of one beautiful face that could fell a city. 3. The heroic spirit within her eyes along with her beautiful face could strike fear into people's hearts and minds. General Tianwei took large strides, arriving in front of the two, and with a whoosh, that broadsword sent out a demonic wind that chilled to the bone. Su Xing raised the binding dragon whisk, magic energy sputtering out, but the star energy's power was blocked by the fish-scale golden armor draped over him. Gong Kaiwei's sword edge swept like a hook, directly stabbing into the golden armor, but the sword edge also had no way of penetrating even a bit. The broadsword swept past the two's brows, forcing Su Xing and Gong Kaiwei to retreat further. That's the golden thread fish-scale armor you spoke of? Su Xing stared at the thread-like yet scaly golden armor, slightly sighing. Do you want it? Then just kill him already. Gong Kaiwei's reply was forceful. She threw out a cold ice palm. The cold chi upon the palm even abruptly dragged down the air temperature to an extreme point as the floor began to ice over. General Tianwei's broadsword waved, his golden armor trembled. His entire body's ghost chi unexpectedly scattered Gong Kaiwei's cold ice palm completely. Su Xing swept the binding dragon whisk, weaving a thread towards General Tianwei. With a mighty grunt, General Tianwei slashed and unexpectedly shattered Su Xing's magical power. A burst of ghost chi flew directly at his abdomen, and Su Xing only caught it with great difficulty. Eat this Gong's 5 styles burning phoenix hairpins. The sound of a coldly spoken incantation. Gong Kaiwei finally for the first time used her own artifact. 5 golden glittering phoenix hairpins flew out from her astral bag. Upon meeting the air, they rose and split off in midair. In a split second, 5 golden lights oddly penetrated General Tianwei's acupuncture points in his forelimbs and neck directly. 5 styles true flame, golden phoenix returns to the nest. Burn! The 5 golden hairpins radiated a golden light, lighting up even the inside of General Tianwei's body. 1. Right arrow curving left 2. Almost like telepathy. Right arrow curving left 3. Most likely he is referring to Helen of Troy. Ho! General Tianwei snarled. A terrifying ghost chi spouted out from his body. Unexpectedly, it directly forced out the 5 hairpins nailed to his acupuncture points. As the golden light immediately faded, it seemed the artifact itself sustained damage to its spiritual chi, and Gong Kaiwei's expression turned cold. General Tianwei raised his blade and slashed towards Gong Kaiwei. At this time, countless threads encircled them from behind and constricted his hands and feet. Countless links wrapping silk technique. Su Xing urged on the binding dragon whisk. In order to deal with the General Tianwei before his eyes, he could no longer afford to hold back in the very least. His star energy surged and was released, turning into countless threads that wrapped around the demon corpse, turning it into a mummy. Gong Kaiwei took advantage of the time to control her sword. Star ladle great essence, sword swiftly rides the wind. Go! The tracing snow turned into a cold light that stabbed the bound corpse demon straight to the bone. The surrounding ghosts tried to intercept it, but they were torn to shreds by the sword chi on the tracing snow. Blue light and ghostly light slammed into each other, and the force from that directly ripped apart Su Xing's countless links wrapping silk technique. The powerful shockwave forced Su Xing backwards several meters. The cold light scattered, and the demon corpse was unexpectedly unscathed. However, that golden thread fish scale armor had given rise to a slight dent. Evidently it had suffered damage that was not light. General Tianwei twisted his face. Gong Kaiwei hastily recalled tracing snow. General Tianwei let loose a great roar, and a great expanse of ghosts pounced towards Gong Kaiwei. 5 small banners suddenly spun around her, halting all of the ghosts. The one who acted was Zhu Sha, of course. General Tianwei noticed the other people present. He roared deep and low, "Die, you petty thieves!" Innumerable ghosts rushed out from within the earth, their enormous quantity covering their field of vision. The group immediately used their star energies to establish a protective barrier. All of a sudden, Su Xing felt a cold, intimidating force rush at him. Raising his head, he only saw General Tianwei's broadsword hacking towards him. Su Xing waved the binding dragon whisk, and its copious amount of threads obstructed General Tianwei's blade. However, the thin silk was then immediately destroyed, alarming Su Xing. He hastily raised the binding dragon whisk in front of him to defend himself while also dodging backwards. In the blink of an eye, the nebula stage artifact exploded as it was shattered into pieces by General Tianwei's broadsword. Su Xing's heart sunk. This demon corpse's power was very strong. Young master, be careful. Wu Xinjie and Lin Yingmei protected his flanks at this time. The moment the knowledge star chanted, she at the same time threw 100 splashing fire talismans all at once. The 100 talismans turned into several hundred fireballs that lit the tomb, almost like daylight. Rumbling explosions resounded throughout the tomb, making the tomb seem like it was about to collapse. At long last, with much effort was the maelstrom of frightening ghosts dissolved. Wu Xinjie complained, "Thus, Xinjie hates ancient tombs the most. They do not say if there are no valuables, and we always bump into these sorts of monsters." General Tianwei was a fierce general during his life, and becoming a corpse demon after dying gave him no cause for thought. With a golden thread fish scale armor that protected his body, a demonic blade that conquered in all four directions. In this tomb rich with ghost chi and innumerable ghosts at his command, it was unknown how much stronger he was compared to a star cultivator's artifacts. It did not occur to these two that this seemingly nondescript and innocuous ancient tomb would unexpectedly have this sort of evil spirit character at the very end. Against this demon corpse, with the artifacts and star energy in their eyes unable to bring an end to this menace, the two changed their tactics. Let's see if it's your broadsword that is powerful, or if this gong swordplay is even better. Gong Kai Wei whispered. The tracing snow in the front rushed to attack the demon corpse, and Su Xing could only take out Silver Blade. It was a pity he did not have any more ammunition, else using it against the demon corpse would have been just perfect. A man and woman threaded their way towards the demon corpse. A frosty cold sword and a monstrous and strange pistol bayonet continuously attacked. But General Tianwei was a great killer across the land, once leading troops and horses numbering 20,000 to defeat an army of 100,000, after all. Comparing his battle prowess, he was not the slightest bit inferior. A white silhouette flew out, and it was Gong Kai Wei forming hand seals in midair. A cold, icy chi shot out of her fingertips, but it was immediately dissolved by ghost chi. General Tianwei wanted to pursue and attack, but 5 small banners suddenly appeared over his whole body. An array came into view as thunder rolled and lightning flashed, provoking the demon corpse repeatedly with great noise. Su Xing plunged Silver Blade straight into the demon corpse's stomach, but this sort of fatal injury was nothing more than scratching an itch for a demon corpse. With all its might, it shrugged Su Xing off and flung him several meters far away, and then it spewed out a thick cloud of ghost chi. Su Xing evaded in alarm. "Young master, shall we retreat first?" Seeing the two at a great disadvantage, Wu Xinjie was becoming anxious. She glanced attentively at the pale-faced Linning. The grave was saturated in ghost chi for 100 years, and the ghost stock of ghost chi was limitless. Opposing the demon corpse's undead raised with ghost chi, this was extremely unfavorable for star cultivators. This was akin to a cultivator proficient in earth techniques, fighting a water technique cultivator in the middle of a large river. Even if the former's rank was higher, the latter could still rely on the terrain to bolster his own power. If it was only Su Xing alone in the grave, he only needed to bring out the blaze refining saber, for that was sufficient to cremate the demon corpse. The blaze refining saber's demon flame sword arts happened to be the right item to subdue the demon corpse and its ghosts. However, there was currently an oblivious Gong Kai Wei nearby. 3. Su Xing was the sort that was more cautious about consequences than others. He could tell that the young lady was not showing all of her strength, holding back her power just a bit, seemingly to gauge Su Xing's minimum capabilities. The demon corpse General Tianwei struggled to free himself from the leader's star's array, standing strong. Just at this time, though, a resolute shadow rapidly approached the demon corpse without warning. Its speed was like lightning and no one expected this. The demon corpse's face was struck ruthlessly, and his body twisted backwards and fell. General Tianwei bellowed, and the ghosts clamored. They wanted to completely devour the flesh of the body responsible for the sneak attack until nothing was left. SFX, hey! The chilly shout that could shake mountains and overturn seas unexpectedly frightened the ghosts, scattering them all. To have this sort of courage and ferocious attack power just shown, and under the condition of not using star energy, in all of Liangshan continent, the only ones capable of this were the star generals of Maiden Mountain. Shockingly, she was Linning. The little general dares to show off his might. Linning Mei tightly clenched her fists very forcefully. Su Xing's mouth opened and shut, wanting to speak, but in the end, Wu Xinjie pulled at Su Xing, shaking her head in refusal. Su Xing was speechless, but he faintly nodded at Linning Mei. Gong Kai Wei and the eternally expressionless leader Star Zhu were both also frightened. How could this seemingly sick and debilitated girl suddenly produce such courage? Zhu Sha's shoulders sunk, suddenly having a pressure push down on her. This general today will take your flesh and blood as tribute. General Tianwei got up, clenching his broadsword, slashing it downwards in a whirlwind. Linning Mei's figure ducked, rushing forward in a low posture with hardly any fear. Just who was it that was confronting General Tianwei? Liangshan continent's famous majestic star Lin Chong. In all of the continent, comparing pure military force, the number that could surpass Lin Chong could be counted with fingers. Even if her body's condition was not even half of its usual strength, the current Lin Yingmei showed a level that still struck fear into people. Punching flesh again and again, breaking muscles one after another, every strike was intended to kill General Tianwei. General Tianwei's odd swordplay seemed to not exist within Lin Yingmei's eyes, every strike easily avoided by the girl. The demon corpse that relied on the golden thread fish scale armor to avoid being felled and protect his body as he fought Su Xing and Gong Kaiwei never thought he would encounter a monster such as she. The broadsword had no way to prevent the forceful Lin Yingmei's surprise attack. The golden thread fish scale armor also seemed to be no more than a decoration, as Lin Yingmei selected to attack the demon corpse's weak points. In the blink of an eye, she had pressured General Tianwei into the defensive. Tearing great pieces of rotting flesh off his body, a putrid stench began to spread through the room. The ghosts howled frantically as they wanted to attack Lin Ying. At this time, Su Xing, Gong Kaiwei and the rest were not about to let the ghosts' wish be fulfilled. The group's assault laid down a protective boundary for Lin Yingmei, cutting off the ghosts' counterattack. Having lost the usefulness of the ghosts as well as the utility of both broadsword and golden thread fish scale armor, the demon corpse was nearly mad. The broadsword's attacks became sloppy, its discipline gone. Just who the hell is this woman? General Tianwei gave a distorted howl. The broadsword swiped nothing but empty space, and Lin Ying suddenly stepped onto the blade. Making a great leap, she clenched her fists tightly. Her pale face had turned red from the intense movements and exertion. As if concentrating all of her anger into her fist, a great pressure was exerted directly on those trembling ghosts. The girl's figure leapt onto the demon corpse's head, and almost like she was Mount Tai of Liangshan's 5 sacred mountains, he was pinned by a great pressure. The heavy pressure unexpectedly frightened the formerly arrogant demon corpse completely into a dumbfounded state. Her heavy fist exploded downwards, directly sending the demon corpse's skull tunneling into its own neck and body. 6. It seemed that this demon corpse was already thoroughly incapable of moving, turning into a pile of pus, and the ghosts floating within the ancient tomb also suddenly crumbled away. Gong Caiwei's mouth hung slightly agape, dumbstruck. 7. Zhu Sha, she's a star general? The leader star Zhu Sha's expression was serious, nodding. That should be correct, and I fear her rank is not low. In Liangshan continent, there were only the exceptional earthly stars among the star generals could ignore cultivation ranks as well as completely pressure down General Tianwei's ghost chi and swordplay. The vast majority of star cultivators relied on artifacts, and not any sort of secret art was able to achieve this feat either. This was the greatest difference between a star general and a star cultivator. 2 star generals. Gong Kaiwei was confused. The historical records were not without past star masters that could contract 2 star generals at the same time, but they were rare as phoenix feathers. Hardly one appeared every 100 years. Surely, she was not that fortunate enough to meet one by chance, and seeing just how unbearably weak this star general was, she recalled what Wu Xinjie said earlier. Gong Kaiwei guess. Could it be because Su Xing and the Knowledge Star signed a contract? She never signed one with Su Xing and is simply a scattered star following him everywhere out of adoration? Or maybe she saved Su Xing once before, so that's why Su Xing would lay down his life to protect her? The resourceful strategist was also thoughtfully nodding her head. This explained why Lin Yingmei was so weak when they first met. She definitely experienced a bitter duel in the past such that it was even possible that Su Xing defeated her. As a result of some cause, she signed a contract and was unable to yield, thus she followed him around. However, she should know that this sort of following around day and night would one day be destroyed. Thinking of this greatly relieved Gong Kaiwei. After all, those that could contract with 2 star generals at once were very terrifying people. Even if identity and pride were hard to avoid, she still had the heart to kill. Gong Kaiwei and her resourceful strategist could not understand if Wu Xinjie's words were meant to mislead them. As for this point, they thought those words were a trap designed to resolve this situation. Even Su Xing might not have thought about this. Zhu Sha, can you guess what star she is? Gong Kaiwei smiled. I can name all of Maiden Mountain star generals that are capable of this imposing manner, but even though her destined star weapons wasn't used, I can still achieve this much. Your servant believes there are 5 heavenly stars capable of this: the strength star Lu Junyi, the majestic star Lin Chong, the harm star Wu Song, the brave star Guansheng, and the skillful star Yan Qing. The first 3 heavenly stars definitely do not sign contracts, and the brave star Guansheng would not face a broadsword empty-handed, so your servant guesses that she should be the skillful star Yan Qing. It is a fact that Yan Qing is an expert in boxing in Liangshan continent. Although the leader star resourceful strategist Zhu Wu did not have knowledge star Wu Yong's think then act, relying on her own analysis, she still thought up a logical guess. Gong Kaiwei nodded, smiling in relief. So it's only the heavenly star that is ranked last. 9. Princess, what do you plan to do? I'll have him accompany me on a trip to enter the Flower Dragon Cave. Gong Kaiwei clapped her hands together while smiling beautifully. 1. Stabbed to the bone and unscathed at the same time, doesn't make sense, guys. Right arrow curving left 2. No. He lost a valuable weapon. Right arrow curving left 3. Recall that Song Kaiwei believes that absorbing the star energy of defeated star generals has severe negative consequences. If Su Xing uses the saber, she'll immediately realize there is the possibility of harmonization with that star energy and may seek to interrogate or kill Su Xing in pursuit of that method. Right arrow curving left 4. Basically a shouting sound effect. Right arrow curving left 5. Could it be transit? Please let me make this reference. Right arrow curving left 6. Right arrow curving left 7. Right arrow curving left 8. Right arrow curving left 9. Are you sure about that? Props to John Cena for the memes. Honestly speaking, Su Xing was also startled by the courage that exploded out of Lin Yingmei. He originally was still anxious about Lin Yingmei and her body's condition, but that seemed somewhat unnecessary. Lin Yingmei was only slightly pale and a little exhausted, however. It seemed that the majestic star's potential was truly unfathomable. Seeing that Gong Kaiwei's expression could not be identified as gloomy or clear, Su Xing spared not another thought on her. If they really wanted to fight, come whatever, he would fight whatever. Even if she had a trump card, with Su Xing's profound star barrier, he did not fear her. The unexpected thing was that Gong Kaiwei walked over wearing a smile, offering extreme praises to Lin Yingmei, apparently not jealous towards Su Xing for having 2 star generals. Only the heavens knew if she was foolish and naive to cause mischief or if there was some other reason, but Su Xing welcomed this with a smiling face. However, Gong Kaiwei then threw out a sentence that completely baffled Su Xing. Young Master Su Xing, this Gong does not know how you feel about acquiring the Blooming Water Divine Thunder this time around? Blooming Water Divine Thunder? Su Xing remained unmoved. Yours truly has star energy only at the Stardust late stage. If I can make a breakthrough within these 10 days, then I'll go observe if I can. If I cannot break through, then I'll just go see the water and land assembly. This Gong wants to invite young Master Su Xing to go to the Flower Dragon Cave together. How about it? Gong Kaiwei's expression was very sincere. Su Xing had not given a reply when Gong Kaiwei interrupted him. If young Master agrees, then this Gong will assist the young Master to break through the Stardust stage and enter the Nebula stage. Your reason? Su Xing spat out these 2 words. The heavens above did not rain down pies, even he knew this fact. Going through this ancient tomb, seeing the young Master has made this Gong become truly fond of you, does that count as a reason? Gong Kaiwei said sweetly. Although I know you really like me, this is an insufficient reason. After all, your one-sided infatuation is not enough to make me trust you. Su Xing rebuffed her. Wu Xinjie laughed with her own master was actually very shameless. This Gong is serious. Does young Master Su Xing want to obtain the true Blooming Water Divine Thunder? The true Blooming Water Divine Thunder? Su Xing did not understand. There were fake copies of the divine thunder? Correct. What everyone gathers in the Flower Dragon Cave is just an ordinary blooming water thunder, a far cry from divine thunder. Even the ones produced by refinement techniques that can turn out a blooming water divine thunder are just barely ordinary. Otherwise, so many years have passed and we have never heard about any cultivator that could successfully obtain amazing powers from the blooming water divine thunder. The reason for that is this. Why did you tell me this? Gong Kaiwei lightly smiled. This gong already said so. I need young master Su Xing. Hidden within the Flower Dragon Cave is a certain paradise. Laying down is an ancient heavenly star forbid dance. It requires 2 star masters' star crests joined together to open, so this gong requires a star master. Heavenly star forbiddance. Su Xing was slightly moved. This was Liangshan continent's most famous and profound type of forbid dance art. This type of forbid dance art was extremely simple to break since it only needed a star crest to open, but this sort of protective formation was also the most terrifying. It appeared as if only a few star cultivators working together could breach it, which was an attractive option since star masters only appeared when the star duel started. In addition, even if they did appear, they were often hostile elements. To reach a mutual understanding to cooperate in breaking the protective formation was not that easy, though. Often, when these forbid dances are discovered, it would make most star cultivators hateful and indignant, so this sort of protective formation was both safe and absolutely dangerous. However, oftentimes the forbidden grounds of the heavenly star forbid dance made cultivators both crazy and regretful because those laying down this type of forbid dance were generally transforming Star of Annihilation rank masters. Who? The items inside were absolutely rare treasures and the like. For instance, the little Kun Wu 3 stars protective formation of 3 months ago that needed 3 star generals to open not only had an astral gemstone and those ancient, bizarre dragons, but Su Xing was also able to find the astral treasure profound star barrier there. Are you sure? How could this gong's information be wrong? 3. Just as you have the resourceful star that can solve a myriad riddles, this gong has the resourceful strategist that is also capable in these matters. Then you sure are fortunate. Su Xing still had some doubts. Gong Kaiwei objected. The blooming water divine thunder will attract many star masters. If young master Su Xing declines, this gong only has to find another person. The reason why this gong decided to help the young master is only because this gong believes if she has young master Su Xing's assistance, then obtaining the blooming water divine thunder is even more certain. After all, the star master that made the knowledge star yield and another heavenly star pledge her life to follow is definitely not a nobody. Su Xing began to think. He did not have a reason to be opposed, and this Gong Kaiwei said everything with such palpitating eagerness. Refusing would be far too foolish. With such a great opportunity, declining simply won't do. Gong Kaiwei tossed something. A porcelain bottle flew into Su Xing's palm. This is a bottle of 7 Lives Cloud Gathering Powder. This gong believes that with young Master Su Xing's natural talent, you will easily enter the nebula stage within 10 days. Gong Kaiwei then also gave Su Xing 2 copies of 1,000 Miles Incantation Transmittance Talisman to use as practice. These talismans already had Gong Kaiwei's divine intent carved into them, so Su Xing could communicate with Gong Kaiwei anytime and anywhere using the talismans. 5. Su Xing sighed gloomily. This beauty truly was lavish. It seemed her background was not simple. This gong will come again on the day of the Water and Land Assembly. When Gong Kaiwei finished saying that, she once again donned another face veil and turned to leave, her pure, untainted and spotless skirt waving. It was almost as if she did not care for them, for her arrival was sudden, as was her exit. Kaiwei, you won't explore any more of this ancient tomb? Su Xing impulsively shouted. Since we already found General Tianwei's actual body, this gong has not any more interest. Gong Kaiwei said lightly. This, Su Xing stared blankly. She seemed to know what Su Xing wanted to say, for Gong Kaiwei's teasing voice spoke a few final words. This gong has no interest in the dead's belongings and shall leave this all to you, young master. Think of it as this gong caring about young master and giving you a small remuneration. Young Master Su Xing, please complete a plan for capturing the true blooming water divine thunder, and like that, Gong Kaiwei took the leader's star Zhu Wu and cleanly departed from the ancient tomb. This sort of out-of-expectation situation was rather stunning. Just what did this woman that loves to call herself this Gong come here to do that she would not even value the golden thread fish scale armor? Young Master, that person is an immortal hero princess. 6. Of course she would not value these things. He, it will do if young master just does not think about her. Wu Xinjie laughed mischievously. Immortal hero princess Su Xing and Ling Yingmei showed their curiosity at the same time. Wu Xinjie covered her mouth. Regardless of whether it's at the Azure Dragon territory or the Vermilion Bird territory, there's still famous star cultivators. Azure Dragon territory, Vermilion Bird territory? Su Xing blinked his eyes. Wu Xinjie explained that these were unique descriptions that star cultivators would mention. Their origins could be traced back to Maiden Mountain. If asked about what thing was the most famous in Liangshan continent, the answer would be the boundless Great Liang dynasty, and it really was not the four great sword sects. That is correct, for regardless of where one was in Liangshan continent, it could be seen at any place, just like the heaven-raising pillar of the Maiden Mountain that was the common understanding of all people. That pillar was like a god descended, and everyone worshipped it. Starting from ancient prehistory, people found the idea of using the heaven-reaching pillar of Maiden Mountain as a center, and the four corners all had their own unique developments. Star cultivators gathered in the east, with auspicious winds and timely rains. Large and small cities spread everywhere, innumerable and highly prosperous. Immense mountains spanned the south, covering 10,000 li. All manners of demons and races, mythical and mundane, gathered there, innumerable and highly dangerous. The wind-singing blue sea lay to the west, a magic cloud gathering covered the sky, Jade Wave Island, an artistic paradise that flourished timeless, and on some days dragons fought with tigers. The north's longitudes and latitudes were filled with wide expanses of both fertile and barren lands. In 10,000 li not a single person. In 1,000 li birds flew out of sight. Its end was invisible. Thus, one day, a certain Almighty would use the Maiden Mountain to demarcate these four developmentally different areas into Azure Dragon, Vermilion Bird, Black Turtle, and White Tiger, these four territories. 7. The Maiden Mountain star duels mostly all fell within the Azure Dragon and Vermilion Bird territories, and Su Xing was now currently in the Vermilion Bird territory. Also, the immortal hero princess that Wu Xinjie spoke of was an amazing person. She was the most precious daughter of Prince Feng Wu 8, having acted as a star master from childhood, practicing sword arts at the Heavenly Ice Sacred Temple with the Queen Consort of Ice. Relying on her innate talent, her mastery of fencing was outstanding. Even several star generals would not necessarily be a foe to her. Because Gong Caiwei's sword techniques were outstanding, much like a handsome and strong god descended. Every movement was filled with a terrifying heroic spirit, so the rest came to call her the immortal hero princess. Her might could clearly be seen. Gong Caiwei's father is Liangshan continent's premier dynasty, the Great Liang dynasty's prince, studying at the Heavenly Ice Sacred Palace. This sort of background can be said to be growing up with a gold spoon in her mouth. Wind blows when she wants it, rain falls when she wants it. She's definitely not his daughter in name only. Wu Xinjie giggled. Su Xing was mute. It did not occur to him that Gong Caiwei's influence was this powerful. No wonder she did not care for artifacts such as the golden thread fish scale armor in the least. If this sort of woman truly became an enemy, this would not be an ordinary problem. I fear many star generals will pursue this sort of star cultivator. Lin Yingmei voiced her misgivings. Correct, little sistering. There is also a legend regarding the immortal hero princess. Once you hear it, you definitely will feel it is fascinating. Wu Xinjie said mysteriously. What legend? Legend has it the very first year that star duels began, the ranked 4th leisure star, Dragon in the Clouds, Gong Sun Sheng and the immortal hero princess signed a contract. What? The leisure star offered her services? Lin Yingmei was moved. Is that true? She still could not believe it. Maiden Mountain's #1 in magic energy, the leisure star, dragon in the clouds, mastered excellent magics. Even if Lin Yingmei were to take excessive precautions, if she were to go against this sort of magic art star general, she believed she had no surefire way of escaping unscathed. Then why the leader's star? Su Xing was hoarse. This is where it gets strange. Wu Xinjie shrugged her shoulders. That definitely is the fierce warrior that's #1 in magic. If she signed a contract with the immortal hero princess brilliant in sword arts, this combination, even the knowledge star felt afraid. We cannot have contempt for her, Lin Yingmei said. Perhaps we really shouldn't underestimate Gong Kai-wei. Su Xing muttered. Su Xing shook his head, not thinking any further. Fortunately, Gong Kai-wei had a measure of self-confidence bordering on arrogance. In front of Maiden Mountain, she was not considered an opponent. Otherwise, an enemy that had a background and identity as luxurious as hers would have been a major headache. Su Xing reached out and closed his hand, holding the golden thread fish scale armor in his hand. Even if she said she did not value the items of the dead, Su Xing could not be bothered about such a sentiment. Inspecting the golden thread fish scale armor, he found it was not very heavy. Besides a few ugly dents left behind by tracing snow, the item itself was mostly intact. 9. Feeling it in his hands, he could feel both the tenacity of it as well as the aforementioned vestiges of destructive magic power. Young master, there's something else over there, Lin Yingmei suddenly said when she saw the demon corpse's remains. Su Xing and Wu Xinjie turned their gazes and saw on the ground was a gray pearl rich in ghost chi. A ghost soul pearl? Wu Xinjie shouted. 1. Su Xing would have to be absolutely stupid to not notice the gap in her behavior. Right arrow curving left 2. Highest rank attainable. Right arrow curving left 3. I'm starting to sense a trend here. Right arrow curving left 4. She made an offer he could not refuse, grinning face, right arrow curving left 5. This description is rather misleading, for it implies communication across great distance. In later chapters, the limitations and actual usage are revealed, and this most definitely is not a cell phone. Right arrow curving left 6. I was tempted to translate this as Perseus Princess, but I decided for a literal translation instead. Right arrow curving left 7. I took great liberties in translating these since the Ross did not necessarily correspond with the traditional 4 symbols. Right arrow curving left 8. Right arrow curving left 9. So much for invincible. Liangshan continent's secret sex techniques were innumerable, and among them was one that entered deeply into people's hearts. Hearing it struck fear into them. This sort of secret art practiced corpse chi. The lesser stage enabled its practitioner to spit corrosive corpse poison, while the upper stage was able to call upon the 9 dark blood seas. This type of technique was extremely cruel, a destruction of human nature such that it was called a demonic technique, and the specialized schools that passed down these sorts of arts were labeled demonic magic instruction cults. Nevertheless, refining ghost chi could not happen with just any soul technique, as a secret was needed for success, and oftentimes various tools were needed as a medium to gather ghost chi. Ghost soul pearls were among the more powerful tools. A ghost soul pearl was a very uncommon sight, and it certainly was not an average artifact. It required being molded by corpse chi for upwards of 100 years, and the location where such a formation took place needed to be a special location that extremely favored ghost chi. In addition, the environment also required at least 100,000 ghosts supplying corpse chi in order to have a chance of condensing into a ghost soul pearl. Ghost soul pearls are rumored to be able to refine, purify soul and corpse, million ghost soldiers, and the 9 infants, and other countless sorts of special abilities. The more ghost soul pearls you assemble, the more powerful the special ability. Wu Xinjie said. Even though he was only holding the ghost soul pearl in his hand, Su Xing felt his entire body was cold. A ghostly wind blew and his hair stood on end. He really had no interest currently in cultivating this sort of demonic object, and even if he really wanted to cultivate this to its minimum, he still needed to wait after he cultivated the heart-like mirror's soul technique to its limits before it could suffice. Otherwise, this kind of overflowing with ghost chi ghost artifact would easily devour its master, and Su Xing definitely did not want to star in this sort of tragedy. Due to the ghostly devouring chi, which could corrupt spiritual power, dispersed by the ghost's soul pearl, Su Xing placed it by itself into its own astral bag. Right after, he took another look throughout the ancient tomb, yet he found nothing else. The number of innocent lives claimed by this General Tianwei that became a demon corpse were unknown. Su Xing gratefully cleaned and looted those precious metals, pearls and funerary objects, and in total, there was 2,000 liang of gold, a lavish fortune by any measure. Su Xing did not leave the demon chi broadsword alone either, storing it within the same bag as the ghost soul pearl. Only then did Su Xing, Lin Yingmei and Wu Xinjie leave the ancient tomb. This adventure in General Tianwei's burial site cost them an entire night. Unbearably exhausted, the three returned home, and as Gong Kaiwei suspected, the other cultivators discovered the ancient tomb's secret from the remains of the water-filled and burnt coffins. However, by the time they formed groups to enter, the inside had long been emptied. And at this time, the one with the biggest harvest, Su Xing, was now within the private room and Suan arranged for him, cultivating the chaotic tail escape technique and the heart-like mirror's soul technique. He dripped with beads of perspiration the size of beans, rolling from his brow along his face. His body's five senses, his muscles that could be seen with the naked eye were contracting, distorting, his veins bulging, almost like a Chiu dragon was spread across his body. His skin turned from a terrifying bright red to a darker shade of red, followed by another change to a light yellow. Between the changes in color, the creaking sound of his bones scraping against one another grew louder and louder. Lin Yingmei and Wu Xinjie trembled in fear as they watched the changes Su Xing was undergoing. And when his muscles tore, leaking blood, Wu Xinjie even wanted to step forward to stop him, but Lin Yingmei grabbed her. It was under the pain of this sight that would shock any bystanders that Su Xing suddenly began to emit a white mist from his skin. This traces of the white mist left behind on his body were like a sedative. The muscles across his whole body that were twisted slowly settled down. In that moment, the people there were able to preserve some tranquility. Su Xing blinked open his eyes, then closed one as he exhaled. "Young master." Upon seeing this, Wu Xinjie sat by his side and carefully wiped clean Su Xing's brow filled with sweat. Lin Yingmei grabbed a bottle of medicinal powder and applied it over Su Xing's wounds that exposed bone. She spoke as she spread the powder. "Young master, do you wish to switch this technique for another?" Even the majestic star could not help but frown when she saw this. This chaotic tail escape really could make one's hair stand on end. Su Xing shook his head and smiled. Combining it with the absolute sincerity technique makes it better. The chaotic tail escape hurt down to the bone, and the heart-like mirror's absolute sincerity soul technique calmed his heart. These two completely on opposite extremes were combined together by Su Xing, their qualities compatible with each other, animated and still, each taking what it needed, unexpectedly achieving a wonderful and harmonious balance. His progression also unexpectedly increased. When the chaotic tail escape reaches the 28th gate, the heart-like mirror's soul technique would break through to the first realm. That golden toad spiritual master is quite amazing. I don't know how he created that sort of escape technique. Lin Yingmei sighed. Wu Xinjie twitched her mouth. I think he must have done many despicable things. Otherwise, why else would one create an escape art whose use necessitates injury? I can probably prepare to condense the Stardust stage into the Nebula stage. Su Xing lightly nodded his head. Not long after, Suan walked into the room, and seeing two beauties attending their master, she smiled sweetly. "Young Master Su Xing, this miasma repellent pill and 7 lives cloud gathering powder have both already been inspected by Suan. They are both superb items and will not harm the young master." "I've troubled you." Su Xing took back the pills and bottle. "Having a medicine as precious as the 7 lives cloud gathering powder means you will have no problem condensing your star energy into the nebula stage. The girl that brought this out was truly extravagant. It seems she truly wants to help the young master." And Suan faintly sighed. "Then is the 6 senses recovery pill now unnecessary?" Wu Xinjie asked, and Suwen softly said, "From Suwen's perspective, the Six Senses recovery pill is still very important. Young Master Su Xing has contracted with two sisters, and his star energy is distinct from ordinary people. Even Suwen has rarely seen this. He will have more difficulty than the ordinary person congealing his star energy, but his chance of success is greater if he has the Six Senses recovery pill." Hearing the divine physician say as such, the group had no other opinions. Give Suwen 3 days' time and she can refine a Six Senses recovery pill. Little sister Suwen, we're counting on you. After 3 days, and Suwen finished the concoction of the Six Senses recovery pill as expected. The efficacious star divine physician did not disgrace her name. Not only did she find substitute materials, she even improved the efficacy of the original Six Senses recovery pill by a level. Soon after, Su Xing again sealed himself in a private room that Suwen arranged for him. Liangshan continent star cultivators' star energy were very special. Starting from nothing then to something, from something to secret, from secret to manifest. From the manifestation step, every refinement needed to be done in sequence in a full circle, almost analogous to giving rise to one. One gives rise to two, two to three, and three to the limits of all living things. A simpler explanation would be to compare the star energy inside a star cultivator's body to a seed. From the very early stardust stage to the very last transforming star of annihilation, one absolutely could not be careless. Su Xing sat cross-legged and began. He felt the stardust star energy in his body slowly flow, and when he started operating, these bits of stardust condensed into a single whole. Congealing all of the stardust in his body together was an enormous feat, and some time after that accomplishment, all of his star energy had been congealed into a single piece. When it was time to condense, Su Xing helped himself to the 7 Lives Cloud Gathering Powder, pouring the medicinal mix into his mouth and seeping into his entire body's meridians. Some sort of refreshing sensation flowed into his heart. Under the Gathering Cloud's powder, the originally unable to condense stardust star energy gradually gathered together. Su Xing began to rapidly refine his star energy. This refinement also took a stretch of time. The stardust already gradually showed the beginnings of the nebula stage, but the star energy surging violently within Su Xing's body was still not quite stable. It finally settled into tranquility after he swallowed a Six Senses recovery pill. Slowly, Su Xing felt the thick star energy in his body start to thin, and then it diluted and expanded. After a few cycles, the dispersed stardust stage star energy finally bound itself into the nebula stage. In a split second, his entire body's star energy completely integrated together. A powerful sense of satisfaction filled Su Xing's body, as if it would break out of his body. Comparing with the stardust stage, this really was an excessive boost in power. Su Xing blinked open his eyes, lifting one side of his mouth to form a hook. 1. Right arrow curving left 2. He already did, though, in chapter 28, right arrow curving left 3. 10 days elapsed in the snap of the fingers. The Heavenly River City's water and land assembly that was taking place today created a colorful and festive, atmosphere. The rippling Wave Kingdom's national power was not as great as the great Liang dynasties that could, at its peak, subdue its neighboring barbarian tribes. However, because the blooming Water Sword sect was based around Heavenly River City, the famed title as one of the Azure Dragon's 4 great sword sects earned the rippling Wave Kingdom its share of the spotlight. Su Xing sat in the second floor of a restaurant, watching the bustling activities happening below on the street leading to rippling Wave Kingdom's imperial palace. Next to him were 2 beautiful ladies sitting on either side of him. One had an imposing heroic spirit, the other a certain charm in her motions. Ling Yingmei and Wu Xinjie did not enter the star nest, for idling in the star nest during an event as lively as the water and land assembly was just far too boring. After the incident in the ancient tomb, Su Xing pondered and understood. Everyone in Liangshan continent believed that star masters could not contract with 2 star generals. As for the 2 beauties at his side, it did not occur to them either that 2 star generals could attend to the same master at the same time. Various talents and specialists entered the main gate successively one after the other. Some wore gorgeous clothing, striding forward with an impressive appearance. Some were covered in dust from traveling, seemingly awake yet not awake as they toured the outside front rows. Of course, there was no shortage of those sitting straight atop mats, having been crowded by others into a clump supporting the front rows. Besides these professionals and specialists that came to celebrate the water and land assembly, rippling wave kingdom's overbearing armored golden cavalry displayed their beautiful attire, and the bejeweled, beautiful ladies were also very eye-catching. Su Xing's star energy had already stepped in among the ranks of nebula cultivators. This star energy was bounds ahead of the Stardust stage, and in no time at all, it condensed within his two pupils. Soon after, he could see an indistinct and hazy aura surrounding people's bodies. These barbarian talents that rushed over did not enter this vision. They could only be counted as fledgling star cultivators, and even the number of Stardust stage cultivators could be counted with fingers. Comparing this with the Great Liang Dynasty's Purple Aura East approaches, 3. The rippling wave kingdom's water and land assembly isn't anything grand or imposing at all. Wu Xinjie said, disappointed. The Great Liang is the #1 dynasty, how could these two be compared? Su Xing shook his head. Over the past few days, Su Xing crammed on Liangshan continent's history, and he knew what the Purple Aura East approaches was. Su Xing looked around the second floor and noticed that most of the people here were star cultivators, and everyone leisurely watched the assembly procession. As far as star cultivators were concerned, what truly attracted them to the water and land assembly was the blooming water divine thunder, and this mundane event could only count as the little extra bit of fun and leisure. The discussions inside the restaurant were enthusiastic, yet at this time, a group of people stepped onto this floor, and all the sound from chatting immediately turned quiet. The ones who came were 5 men and 2 women, wearing primarily white robes embroidered with aqua blue lining along the edges, carrying an aqua blue-colored saber on their backs. Walking the road, they gave an imposing appearance, and upon their robes was emblazoned a blooming water sword insignia. Impressively, these were disciples of the blooming water sword sect. The one that caught everyone's interest was one of the girls. In total contrast to the white and blue robes, she wore a simple and elegant long gown. Around her waist was tied a tassel skirt, and her expression was delicate and pleasant. She stood at the side of a man whose indifferent appearance was incongruous to hers, and upon seeing Su Xing's table, he showed some bewilderment in his eyes. From her attire and demeanor, it was easy for people to think of star generals. The people of the blooming water sword sect swept their gaze over the place and sat in empty seats. The water and land assembly this time around is very lively. It seems senior brother Zhonglin will not have few opponents. What are you saying, junior brother? How could these cultivators be senior brother Zhonglin's opponents? Hehe, they'd better know themselves. This group of blooming water fledglings discussed among themselves unbridled, not putting the surrounding cultivators in their gazes. The rest of the people did not even utter a word. Heavenly River City was the blooming water sword sect's domain, and even the blooming water divine thunder was the sword sect's sole technique. No one dared to offend these blooming water sword sect disciples, and that man that took the lead was obviously a star master, making provoking them even less likely. Anyone would know that if a sword sect turned out a star master, that person would be treated as an emperor. However, if no one dared to speak, then no one would care. Fellow student Zhonglin is quite mighty, bringing out a star general along like this. Amazing, amazing. A square-faced, sturdy giant of a man laughed out loud, wearing a flax-colored Chong Pao. He was muscular, and sitting at his table were several men and women dressed the same way as he. Each and every one of their expressions were calm. So it's fellow Wu. 5. Could it be the Heavenly River Sword School is also hammering out a plan to obtain the blooming water divine thunder? Zhonglin drank his tea, disdaining the opposite party. Hehe, can't I play with it? Cultivator Wu magnanimously laughed, but the gloom in his eyes was more fierce than anyone else's. Qin Zhonglin, 6. This Wu advises you to not go to Flower Dragon Cave for your own good. Even if you are considered the blooming water sword sect's favorite disciple, it is difficult to keep you safe. If you perish within, then the gains cannot outweigh the losses. Fellow Wu, consider your words a bit further, Chen Zhonglin said unhurriedly, and thereupon extended a finger. The beverage in the drink became a liquid arrow and shot out. Cultivator Wu coldly smiled. With a flick of his fingers, a water ball similarly shot forward. The two water attacks collided and merged together, the star cultivator's star energies secretly battling within that water sphere. Cultivator Wu was soon somewhat straining, and mobilizing his strength, the intertwined water balls loudly exploded. Chen Zhonglin maintained his unhurried countenance, and Wu Cultivator laughed, truly worthy of being called Blooming Water Sword Sect's #1 student. As if contracting with a star general wasn't enough, in only 3 short years, your cultivation has stepped into the Nebula late stage. This Wu is in admiration. Nebula late stage? The rest of the cultivators in the restaurant let out a breath of cold air. Su Xing was engrossed by the two great schools' battle arts, and seeing the other cultivators' shocked expressions, he was slightly puzzled. Only Nebula late stage? This sort of cultivation was considered something special? Young master, for the sake of upholding the contract, only star cultivators present after the star duels begin can sign contracts. Wu Xinjie quietly explained, this is only the 3rd year of the star duels, so cultivating to Nebula late stage is considered very impressive. It seems what he said is correct, that this Chen Zhonglin is a specially groomed star master. Su Xing clearly understood. Put this way, the he who stepped into Nebula stage in only 3 months would be viewed by others as a monster. The Blooming Water Sword sect and the Heavenly River Sword School's secret feud arose when they acted and responded against one another. 7. These two groups' strong hate is considered to stretch far into the past. The Blooming Water Sword sect is situated in the Heavenly Mountains, which as it turned out, was an area that once belonged to the Heavenly River Sword School. After the sudden advent of the Blooming Water Sword sect, the Heavenly River Sword School had no choice but to bow and give way, moving the school to the lower reaches of the Heavenly River. Recently, the Heavenly River Sword School turned out a genius-level cultivator who reportedly graduated to Galaxy Stage cultivation within a short 10 years. In 20 years, he was already about to break through to the Supercluster stage, enjoying fame within the Azure Dragon territory, and the Heavenly River Sword School's inner circle wanted to retake their precious land. From their discussion, Su Xing understood that entering the Flower Dragon Cave to obtain the Blooming Water Divine Thunder was yet another crisis because only Nebula stage cultivators could enter. Whatever cultivators were doing inside, the people outside were incapable of intervening. Under this sort of unrestricted environment, the greedy hearts of people were easily stirred. As a result, entering the Flower Dragon Cave under the pretense of obtaining the thunder, murdering and plundering would definitely occur. However, even if this was the case, the footsteps of people chasing their hopes could not be stopped. As the problems between the two groups intensified, just when it seemed they were about to fight, it was at this time that an extremely bored voice interrupted them. If you want to fight, then fight, you bitches. Let other people have something to laugh about. The girl in the simple and elegant long gown had eyes that held an impatient intention. The young lady is angry over nothing. This Wu is only properly reminding your man. Cultivator Wu said. Again, bitch. Do you or don't you believe this young lady will pluck out your tongue? Nebula late stage is amazing? The young girl was upset. Cultivator Wu's face was green, for he truly did not dare move a hand against a star general. Fellow Zhonglin, I bid you farewell. He rose, cupped his fist and left in one smooth motion. Yawa, 9. What is worth getting angry over these mediocre people for? Come, drink a cup of rice wine. A smile rose upon Chen Zhonglin's face. Gazing at his star general, the surrounding star cultivator's eyes showed envy. Boring. The young girl insipidly grabbed the cup that was passed over, and tilting her head back, downed everything. Experiencing such an episode, Chen Zhonglin had also lost his interest, so he and his companions all left the restaurant together. Looking at the time, the water and land assembly was about over. The rest of the cultivators also left one by one, eagerly preparing for the flower dragon cave. Su Xing saw nothing noteworthy and also descended, going to the weapon refinement shop to take the bullets he commissioned earlier. En route, recalling that simple and elegant girl, Su Xing asked Wu Xinjie curiously, "Xinjie, which star general was that?" Xinjie feared usage of her technique would be sensed, so it wasn't used. However, her star energy isn't high, so she is most probably an earthly star. Wu Xinjie guessed. Su Xing nodded his head. Young master still isn't satisfied with just Xinjie and Yingmei? Wu Xinjie teased. Su Xing did not have these intentions. Of the 108 stars of the Liangshan Maiden, any star maiden made him feel very curious. Arriving at the workshop, the cultivators here were not as numerous as last time. The majority had all gone to the water and land assembly, and the remaining few thought it best to clean their treasures. Su Xing entered the weapon refinement shop. The refining weaponsmith was just busy forging a weapon, and when he saw Su Xing enter, he passed a box over to him without saying another word. Placed inside, neat and tidy, were 25 dark golden conical bullet heads, traces of a refined red color vaguely leaked out. Feeling it in his hands, Su Xing immediately felt something was off. The temperature of the bullets was rather high, a heat that seemed to want to burst out from the body. Young master, just throwing out these sorts of warheads is a bit pitiful. Who said I'd be throwing these? Su Xing fed the 25 thunder fire bullets into his magazines, secretly nervous from the bottom of his heart, for he did not know if these were actually usable. Young master, allow this servant to test the young master's new artifact. Lin Yingmei volunteered. Pay some attention. Su Xing nodded. Arriving at an empty space, he had Lin Yingmei go out 100 meters. Su Xing raised his gun. Lin Yingmei brought out the Arctic Star Spear, and without so much as a word, she rushed fiercely. Su Xing pressed the trigger. A scorching hot sensation, almost like a bundle of flame, directly sprouted out of the barrel. Thunder rumbled and tore through the air. Even though she was standing not too far behind, Wu Xinjie could feel the heat that was generated. Lin Yingmei's eyes stared, raising her long spear and sweeping it at the attacking bullets. Sifex, rumble. The air gave rise to an explosion that unexpectedly pushed Lin Yingmei back directly. The knowledge star's jaw dropped, flabbergasted. Young master, what artifact is this? Wu Xinjie was stunned. The thunder fire bullets with extra star energy added that were fired frightened even Su Xing, the one who stood behind the barrel that let loose this awesome power. These exceeded the power of normal bullets by too many magnitudes. Checking and seeing that Lin Yingmei was not seriously injured, Su Xing did not test any further the remaining 24 projectiles. Now let's go find that immortal hero princess. Su Xing took out the 1,000 miles incantation transmittance talisman and stirred its magic energy. The script upon the charm turned into a serene light that shot out and away, and Su Xing immediately followed it after he used it. The 1,000 miles incantation transmittance talisman script could find the designated divine intent carved into it as long as it was within 1,000 miles. After a moment, Su Xing found Gong Kaiwei within the heavenly river's highlands. You're very late. Gong Kaiwei cast an indignant glance, carrying herself in low spirits. You didn't watch the water and land assembly? Su Xing knew the moment he asked that this was a useless question. The other side was the princess of the great Liang dynasty, so it was very unlikely that she only rarely watched such large spectacles. Sure enough, Gong Kaiwei showed an appearance of great disdain. Watch out for yourself in a moment. The star cultivators that are entering the Flower Dragon Cave include strong adversaries not few in number, and this Gong does not ponder this variable. I don't need you to tell me. Su Xing did not take her overbearing manner very well. Seeing as they still had time, Su Xing sat down cross-legged and gazed at the heavenly river's endless expanse as he sunk into his own thoughts. To one side was the heavenly mountain, and to the other was White Horse Highland. And beyond this White Horse Highland was Liangshan continent's Golden Age dynasty, the Great Liang. Suddenly, Su Xing recalled a problem. This White Horse Highland covered several tens of thousands of li, and Gong Kaiwei wanted to travel for just how long? Su Xing was about to ask when he suddenly saw several escaping lights flying out of the horizon. Seeing clearly, they were unexpectedly several cultivators using the wind to control their swords, traveling the horizon. Su Xing's eyes were fixed upon them. That's riding sword flight? Gong Kaiwei turned her head, not understanding why Su Xing said this. Can you do that too? Su Xing asked, embarrassed. You can learn sword manipulation arts at Nebula late stage. There's nothing impressive about it. Gong Kaiwei coolly said. Then that group of cultivators are all Nebula late stage? Su Xing was amazed. Waiting here in the meantime, the great many of these fleeing lights coming from the sky were just like shooting stars. Seeing those cultivators flying swiftly through the wind, he had a content expression, but Su Xing's heart itched. He was a pilot after all, and had always yearned for the sky, but this flying was far more fun than the J-14. 2. It was just a pity that he was still far from Nebula late stage. Another escaping light flashed once more, and suddenly, the cultivator atop the sword stopped. Spotting Gong Kaiwei and Su Xing, he altered the sword's course towards them. Seeing the Nebula late stage cultivator rush towards them, Su Xing did not dare to be careless. That cultivator hovered before them. He was 35, 36 years old and very mild in appearance. Seeing Su Xing was only a Nebula early-stage cultivator, he paid Su Xing no mind. All of his attention was placed on Gong Kaiwei. Cupping his fist, this one is the Dry Tree Mountain's Yun Yuzi. 3. This lady definitely came to explore the Flower Dragon Cave. This one does not know if you would or would not form a partnership. This one will most definitely not disappoint the lady. Are you a star master? Gong Kaiwei asked coolly. Yun Yuzi went blank. He thought this was a joke, but seeing Lin Yingmei, Wu Xinjie and Zhu Sha, these three girls with peerless beauty, he immediately raised a smile, saying, Yun Yuzi was rude. Saying that, he leapt upon his sword. When he was far away, he turned his head around, his eyes flashing a hint of malice. There are so many Nebula late-stage cultivators. Wu Xinjie blinked her eyes. Those escaping lights absolutely dazzled the eyes. During the time they were waiting, more than 20 cultivators had passed by. This blooming water divine thunder thing is wanted by everyone. A great many cultivators at the Water and Land Assembly's opening will intentionally suppress their cultivations for this one moment. Danger lurks around every corner in there. This is absolutely not a laughing matter. Why does this Flower Dragon Cave intentionally restrict the cultivation level? Lin Yingmei completely did not understand. I assume this Flower Dragon Cave must be hiding the secret of the blooming water divine thunder. Only opening once every 50 years. The interim 50 years is reportedly the period during which the blooming water thunder takes shape. The reason why there is a cultivation restriction is perhaps because of this point. They fear that a cultivator with magnificent power will enter and pull the blooming water thunder out by its roots. Wu Xinjie giggled. She was completely unable to explain her profound idea. It must definitely have a connection to the true blooming water divine thunder that the princess spoke of. Gong Kaiwei gave her praise, as expected of the knowledge star. You were able to deduce this from such a small clue. Indeed, there is a connection. Young master, consider this for a moment. Perhaps the true blooming water divine thunder is also not simple to obtain. Wu Xinjie said to Su Xing. Gong Kaiwei glanced pensively at Su Xing. Young master Su Xing has only just advanced to the nebula stage. If he sounds the retreat now, this Gong will understand. If you don't enter the dragon nest, you won't get a dragonling. Su Xing's resounding words held great force. The knowledge star still felt anxious, for the Flower Dragon Cave's restrictions also gave star generals no way to enter. If this woman really was playing some sort of trick, she and Lin Chong could only watch helplessly. Su Xing smiled at Gong Kaiwei. If this is truly very dangerous, Lady Kaiwei, you wouldn't mind if I used a water escape talisman? Speaking of this water escape talisman, most of the cultivators that were entering Flower Dragon Cave had prepared some. After all, everyone knew that the inside was a lawless killing ground. No one wanted to unexpectedly lose their lives so easily. In the end, treading the Star Road was not easy, So as a result, several star cultivators in Heavenly River City began to place bets and speculate. Making great fortunes on a normal day, a 200 liang gold primary water escape talisman could sell for 500 liang of gold, a considerable profit. As long as you help me open the Heavenly Star Forbid Dance, the rest is up to you, Gong Kaiwei said, downplaying the situation. After another stretch of time, atop the Flower Dragon Terrace, the water and land assembly entered its final stages. The emperor ascended the terrace, praying to the heavens for blessings. Countless talents used their unique skills to answer the heavens. The emperor of Rippling Wave Kingdom guided a courtier to face the river and pray. The sky filled with thick clouds, thunderbolts increasing in number. Several bolts of lightning even broke through the cloud layers and struck the heavenly river, erupting multiple ocean sprays. Magic clouds, lightning flashes, thunderclaps all in great numbers would, to the layman, seem as if heaven really gave an answer. One by one, they all knelt in worship, not rising from their knees as they prayed. The cultivators that had been waiting for ages began to grow excited. This emperor is actually very smart, exploiting this to hoodwink the masses, Su Xing said. It reinforces his authority as the Son of Heaven. Don't mind this sort of mundane affair. Make ready, the Flower Dragon Cave is about to appear. Gong Kaiwei was imposing, staring attentively at the heavenly river. Upon the tranquil expanse of the heavenly river, several hundred congruent whirlpools varying in size magically appeared on the water's surface. By their rapid counterclockwise rotations, a fantastic flower bud took shape, the entire scene incomparably spectacular. The magic clouds, thunder and lightning were all sucked into the whirlpools on the lake's surface. The wind started to blow fiercely, and the lightning bolt strikes became increasingly concentrated, dazzling the eyes. Everyone's line of sights reached the heavenly river's surface that was already covered densely by whirlpools. Su Xing watched as eager and wary cultivators alike all rushed towards the inside of the whirlpool. Placing down tracing snow, it grew bigger a size, and then, get on. Su Xing stepped onto the flying sword, both hands supporting the young girl's slender waist. 5, you guys wait here. Young master, princess, be careful. The Star Maidens advised. Gong Kaiwei nodded. With a light step of her foot, her sword was immediately covered in a dark blue escaping light and shot towards the heavenly river. Two people cannot enter the whirlpool at the same time. Gong Kaiwei steered her flying sword and glanced at Su Xing when they were above the whirlpool. Her meaning was obvious. Su Xing let go and threw himself off. With his star energy protecting his body, he jumped into the whirlpool. He did not have a chance to get a clear look before his entire world spun round and round. His eyes were dazzled, and he cleanly disappeared just like the rest of the other star cultivators. The last thing he heard was Gong Kaiwei saying, "Remember, meet at the Flower Dragon Pond." It was as if he had returned to his first time sitting in the anti-centrifugal force simulator for his aviation training, only the centrifugal force here was several times more powerful. Su Xing nearly vomited, but taking a look, his entire surrounding scenery had already completely changed. He was in a rotting, dark blue cave, the entire ground covered with river water that reached up to his ankles. The cave was several tens of meters high, and hanging from it was every sort of conical stalactite. The entire place had uneven faults and platforms. Jagged rocks, exotic flowers and plants could be seen everywhere, and the air was thick with a fetid, fishy smell. So this was the Flower Dragon Cave? Facing this bizarre environment, a distrusting Su Xing vigilantly scanned the entire area once with his divine intent in order to avoid happening upon a star cultivator in the surroundings. After all, this rocky cavern's greatest foes were the star cultivators harboring sinister thoughts of making easy money. Fortunately, the dozens of meters around him were peaceful. Still, Su Xing was alert of his surroundings as he took out Silverblade with one hand and sized up all of his own surroundings. He recalled in his mind the description regarding Flower Dragon Cave he received before arriving here. The Flower Dragon Pond Gong Kaiwei mentioned was a lake at the center of the Flower Dragon Cave. The distance from his current position was several tens of li, At the minimum. The Nebula late-stage cultivators who entered that understood flower dragon cave were several dozen in number, and Su Xing did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. Trekking at a careful pace, he used the rocks as cover. He advanced slowly, possessing the rich experience of a trained soldier. Hiding his figure was very simple, but the problem was that a cultivator's divine intent was not easily countered. The concealing star techniques he learned that hid nebula-stage cultivators might as well be considered sloppy. He crossed several hundred meters like this, when very gradually, Su Xing started to hear a cacophony of voices coming through from somewhere. Miserable screams, loud shouts, and pleas for mercy began to increase in number. These star cultivators that killed and plundered really did not dare to delay even a moment. Spelunking for a long while, Su Xing suddenly saw before him a blue flower floating above the surface of a lake. The flower bud was about the size of his palm, and the petals strangely appeared to be wave-shaped, folded layer upon layer. Its stamen revealed sparks of blue electricity as it lazily swayed in the wind. Thunderwater flower? Su Xing stared blankly. The star cultivators that came to Flower Dragon Cave to take the legendary flower water divine thunder were actually here to take several of these bizarre water thunder propagating flowers. The more of these thunder water flowers that were gathered, the more pure and powerful a flower water thunder could be refined. So frankly speaking, star cultivators coming to the Flower Dragon Cave were here to see who could pluck the most of these thunder water flowers. Of course, even if one thunder water flower could not be refined into flower water divine thunder, using it for other artifacts and talismans as materials was also incomparably precious. As a result, every time the Flower Dragon Cave opened, there were countless star cultivator casualties, but the many greedy star cultivators only grew in number. Unexpectedly encountering this item, Su Xing did not let it go to his head at all. Rather, he wrinkled his brow and hid to the side. The gloomy lightning released by the thunderwater flower very quickly drew in another star cultivator. Seeing other people were absent from his surroundings, the other party did not hesitate. Forming a hand seal, a throwing knife shot towards the thunderwater flower's stem. When it neared, the thunderwater flower's lightning discharged, shooting down the small knife. The star cultivator grit his teeth and cast upon himself a protection technique. He rapidly approached it, one hand even clutching a water escape talisman, prepared to flee at the sign of an abnormality. He seemed to be even more careful than Su Xing. It was just that, in terms of greed, he also surpassed Su Xing, and this was doomed to lead to tragedy. Seeing the thunderwater flower before his eyes, the star cultivator's face had only just become delighted when suddenly, something strange abruptly appeared. That thunderwater flower's peaceful lightning seemed to bare its fierce fangs as it hacked towards the star cultivator. How could the star cultivator have imagined that this thunderwater flower would suddenly rise in revolt? He did not have any sort of reaction at all when he was hit, not even letting loose a scream as his entire body was paralyzed. And this was followed by an inconceivable scene before his eyes. Tvex, water rushing and bubbling loudly. That thunderwater flower suddenly elevated as a sea serpent several dozen meters long raised its head from within the lake. Its entire body was colored like the water, smooth without scales, its narrow snake pupils a dark blue. Sharp and long poisonous fangs grew from its upper jaw, and that graceful thunderwater flower was a mimic that was actually its snake crown. This wasn't a thunderwater flower at all. It was clearly an even higher quality material for the blooming water divine thunder, flower python thunderhorn. The star cultivator had reached the extreme point of shock. The sea serpent opened its ferocious mouth and swallowed whole the star cultivator, alive, in a single bite. Then the snake focused its eyes on its surroundings, releasing a cold glint, and it continued to be like a first-rate hunter as it dived back into the water. Its skin and the water mixed into singular wholes such that the naked eye had absolutely no way of perceiving it. That flower python thunder horn perfectly imitating the thunderwater flower floated above the lake surface, just as elegant and peaceful as before, almost as if nothing had happened at all. Su Xing's lungs were suffocating. Blooming water demon python. 2. Ever since he encountered Golden Flower Beast. 3. Su Xing felt the worldview of Liangshan continent was far more bizarre than he had imagined, and then he had the opportunity to cram on Liangshan continent's odd fauna. Liangshan continent's birds and animals were divided into fierce, demon, fine, fearful, spirit, deity and holy, these 7 types. Fierce beasts posed a danger only to the common folk, whereas deity and holy beasts practically existed only within legends and folklore. In contrast, demon beasts and the like rampaged all over the land, and they were absolutely terrifying existences. Seeing this blooming water demon python's almost human intellect, opposing it required using a rather costly technique. Su Xing thought for a bit and still decided to not face this danger since he did not require the thunder water flower anyways. The right course of action was to regroup as quickly as possible with Gong Kaiwei, but something bad was about to happen. He had barely even took a few steps to leave when he heard behind him once more the sounds of several men and women cultivators' amazed voices. "Ah, a thunder water flower! What good fortune!" Su Xing shook his head, and as expected, terrified screams rang out behind him once again. The shrieks grew louder and louder, closer and closer. Su Xing turned his head to quietly curse at them, but he saw a cultivator flying rapidly towards him in escape, an imposing and horrifying blooming water thunder python following close behind, its mouth wide open. 5. That thunder water flower snake flower crown flashed an explosion of light. The cultivator hastily offered a sacrifice. Several flying daggers spun towards it, and a lightning flash shot out from the snake flower crown of the blooming water thunder python. The spiritual powers of those artifacts was immediately destroyed. One after another they fell, and the cultivator knew at a glance that he was not a match, immediately using his water escape talisman. Before he knew it, the blooming water thunder python suddenly attacked, its hunting movements so swift that there was practically no time to even blink. The cultivator issued a terrified scream as he was swallowed alive by the blooming water thunder python. Su Xing cursed, for the time required to use the water escape talisman was several seconds. This blooming water thunder python did not need even a second to capture its prey. Its speed was far too fast. Hiss! The blooming water thunder python's dark blue snake pupils stared at Su Xing like the monster it was, for it was at least several dozen meters long, and then, bang! The blooming water python launched a relentless thunderbolt, and Su Xing hastily stepped to the side, leaning against a stalactite. He originally wanted to open fire, but the blooming water python's counterattack was extremely quick, not giving Su Xing a chance to open fire at all. The demon python apparently knew that a star cultivator's weakness was in close quarters, trying in vain again and again to swallow Su Xing. It opened its ferocious mouth wide, a fishy stench spewing out as if it were a storm. Su Xing dodged left and right, already quietly approaching in the blink of an eye. He raised the bloodthirsty weapon silver blade that was in his hands, ruthlessly shooting at the blooming water python's head. Su Xing had more or less made out that the thunder water flower snake crown, 6, was this blooming water python's greatest weapon, so he immediately needed to pluck that blooming water python's snake crown. This weapon was definitely more deadly than its venomous fangs. Once this flower snake crown fell, the threat the blooming water python posed would drastically decrease. This had far more effect than attacking anywhere else on the blooming water python. Soldiers paid close attention to single-strike kills, even if the Air Force had stringent demands for accuracy. It was just that this demon python's head was not so easy to deal with. Its fierce head rotated 180 degrees, its glittering demonic snake pupils were glued on Su Xing. The flower sitting atop its head lightly flashed by, and a powerful lightning bolt appeared without warning, in an instant exploding towards Su Xing. Su Xing raised his arm to defend. His body was sent flying after receiving the strike, knocking a row of stalactites into the water. His whole body completely lost feeling, for he was paralyzed by thunder and lightning. The blooming water thunder python quickly slithered over. Its senses within the rocky cavern were matchless, for when it saw that its opponent was paralyzed, it opened its mouth wide without the slightest hesitation. Su Xing gave a wry laugh, and suddenly, just as the blooming water python descended upon him, His body that would not budge abruptly rolled, avoiding the blooming water python's bite. Silver blade brought with it a sharp hiss and a fierce wind, resolutely cutting into the blooming water python's back. It kept digging deeper, a cold, silver light tearing open nearly half its body. Hex! Boom! The blooming water python had a chance meeting with lightning, its body shaking fiercely, raising its head as it hissed miserably. It whipped its snake tail heavily at Su Xing. Looking down on this demon python's might, the wind from raising its tail alone was able to blow Su Xing away. Taking advantage of this moment, the blooming water python suddenly ascended, binding Su Xing closely together like a rope. Its open mouth leaked malevolence, an ugly orifice. It hissed as it gnashed its teeth, seemingly declaring that it was pleased with itself, wishing to chew apart this enemy that could break free of its water thunder paralysis. Chew on this, careful you don't burn yourself. Su Xing raised his gun, pulling the trigger. A powerful recoil that even shook Su Xing blasted, and the thunder fire bullet exited the barrel. The projectile's speed combined with the addition of nebula stage star energy made it ascend another level. The blooming water python screeched in terror, its upper jaw bursting and spilling out a luminous fireball, its fresh blood spraying across the rocky cave's river. Su Xing even fired twice, and the blooming water python's upper jaw fangs directly exploded. With 3 rounds spent, the thunder fire bullets that remained were only 21. Su Xing did not want to waste any more ammunition and fiercely pounced on the serpent. Silver Blade's keen edge was prepared to strike while the iron was hot, ready to give this snake a few more cuts. The blooming water python had guessed wrongly Su Xing's fighting strength. It could never have predicted that the Su Xing close behind it possessed this sort of terrifying artifact. Its thunder water flower snake crown again issued more lightning. Su Xing easily dodged, letting the blade edge rend the blooming water python's flesh. As the next cut came, the blooming water python knew it was in danger. It saw that it was in an unfavorable situation and immediately rose up into the air, fleeing away, pulling a distance away from Su Xing, where escape was certain. It raised its body straight up and wrapped around a stalactite, a devil and monster. Su Xing missed a chance to kill this blooming water python, and in his heart he could not help but feel a bit of pity. However, this python had sustained injuries, so its strength was heavily reduced. If he wanted to behead it, even this would not be an impossible task. Without hesitation, the tips of his toes dipped onto the water, splashing it everywhere, and Su Xing also rose high up in the air, rushing once more towards the blooming water python. The blooming water python stared unwaveringly at Su Xing, its dark blue snake pupils like an iridescent cold light in the middle of night. Its huge, satiny body swayed from time to time, carrying with it a whistling gale. Its back had an enormous wound, as if some kind of great power fiercely ripped it open. Blood poured out from the wound in torrents, dripping over the ground, each drop assembling with others into bloody puddles. The blooming water python opened its mouth wide, bringing paralytic saliva that slowly oozed out. Its rage was bottomless, its heart absolutely filled with resentment. It was this strong and strangely scented star cultivator in front of it that gave it such a heavy strike, gave it such an immense wound, dissipating its strength. In its capacity as Flower Dragon Cave's most frightening existence, this was absolutely a disgrace. Rapidly flicking its snake tongue, the blooming water python could only but wish it was able to slowly chew apart this human that was a greater evildoer than it, swallowing him into its stomach. Watching Su Xing rush in front of it, the blooming water python abruptly turned its body slightly, its immense snake tail hacking downwards. Su Xing only heard a whistling sound, and a wailing gale was stirred up. He held fast, and when the ray of light above him dimmed, a mad and fierce power, almost like a mountain was pressing down on him, pushed towards him. Su Xing immediately brought his body down, and then he dodged towards his left. With a mighty boom, the blooming water python's tail swept from his side, striking heavily upon the water. The moment its attack failed to connect, the blooming water python did not give Su Xing any chance to catch his breath. It immediately started to advance to its second rippling attack. It opened wide its mouth, still sputtering blood, sending forth 10 great bolts of lightning from its venomous fangs and shooting them out of its snake crown. They were like smaller pythons hissing through the air and bearing fangs towards Su Xing, a power most astonishing. Perfect! Su Xing coldly smiled. His left hand formed a hand seal, and the Thunder Cry sword flew out from within his astral bag. After entering Nebula stage, Su Xing could truly use this Thunder Cry sword. Glimpsing the thunder charm along its blade, lightning collected together, and the lightning shooting towards Su Xing was all stopped by his Thunder Cry sword. The blooming water python's vitality had sustained crippling damage, and the power of the water thunder it spat up was also in decline. After the attack was dissolved by the Thunder Cry sword, Su Xing said, "Quick!" The Thunder Cry sword emitted an air-shattering noise. It skewered the blooming water python's upper jaw. Su Xing was not lenient, and urging on his star energy without any margin for error, the Thunder Cry sword's lightning immediately split open. This blooming water python finally sampled a taste of electrocution. Not letting it howl in grief for long, Su Xing rushed forward, appearing atop the blooming water python's head in the blink of an eye. The blooming water python's flower apparently was the final battle. Su Xing raised his gun and pressed it against the flower stem. 7 affix, bang! A sharp and clear penetrating sound. That thunder water flower snake crown was immediately uprooted. The blooming water python's anguished howls turned into whimpers as it fell into a pool of blood. Even though a hole had been punched through its brain, it still struggled upon its deathbed. Finally, its breath was completely severed by Su Xing's sword. Wiping away his sweat, Su Xing let out a breath of air. It seemed he really could not relax within this flower dragon cave. Not only were there star cultivators, but there were also these demon beasts. Su Xing examined the simple and elegant thunder water flower snake crown in his hand. The flashing lightning and thunder in the snake crown dripped into the Thunder Cry sword like water. Might as well take something like this, so that it doesn't seem like I came here for nothing. Su Xing thought to himself. It was hard to say if heaven knew whether what everything Gong Kaiwei said about a real blooming water divine thunder was true or not. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.